The mine exploded 30 feet beneath the steel belly of the M1150, and Captain Marcus Sullivan felt it in his bones. 50 tons of American engineering shuddered. The reactive armor panels absorbed the blast like a boxer taking a gut punch, but Red felt every joule of kinetic energy transfer through the hull and into his chest. He was 58 years old, too old for this. His hands, scarred and weathered from 3 decades of touching hot metal and cold fear, gripped the joystick that controlled the mine plow. The hydraulic system whined under stress. The temperature gauge climbed toward the red zone. Sweat carved rivers through the dust on his face. Through the forward vision port, the Afghan desert stretched endless and hostile. Heat shimmers made the horizon dance. Somewhere out there, beyond the minefield they were carving through meter by meter, 200 Marines were dying. And Red didn't know that one of them was his son. The radio crackled, static then a voice, young, strained, fighting to stay calm under fire. Any station, this is Bravo 2 Actual. We are taking heavy casualties, ammunition at 40%, request immediate assistance. Over. Red reached for the transmit button, then stopped. His job wasn't to talk. His job was to clear the path so someone else could bring salvation. He'd been doing this job for 36 years, clearing paths, making ways through impossible places, bringing people home, except the ones he loved. The voice on the radio continued. There was something in the cadence, something in the way the words fought through exhaustion that made Red's chest tighten, but he pushed the feeling down. He had a mission. Feelings got people killed. Breacher 6, this is Bravo 2 Actual. If you're out there, we're running out of time. Red closed his eyes for just a moment. Just one moment to remember why he was here. Why he was always here. In the sand, in the heat, in the metal coffins that somehow kept him alive when so many others died. Then he opened his eyes and went back to work. But that voice on the radio, it sounded like home. 72 hours earlier, the barracks at Forward Operating Base Leatherneck smelled like every military barracks Red had ever known. Sweat and gun oil and the particular staleness that comes from too many men living in too small a space for too long. Red Sullivan sat on his cot, surrounded by 3 decades of accumulated nothing. A duffel bag, half-packed, a few uniforms, pressed and precise, a shaving kit that had been to more countries than most people would ever visit, and a single photograph in a frame so scratched and worn that the glass looked frosted. The photograph showed a boy, 8 years old, maybe 9, Halloween costume, Marine dress blues 3 sizes too big, cover tilted at a jaunty angle that would make any drill instructor scream. The boy was smiling, really smiling, the kind of smile that comes from pure, uncomplicated joy. Red couldn't remember the last time he'd seen that smile in person. He picked up the frame. Dust came off on his fingers. 20 years of dust, he supposed. 20 years of carrying this photo from base to base, deployment to deployment, war to war. 20 years of looking at it every night before sleep and wondering where that boy had gone. Michael. His son's name was Michael. Is Michael, Red corrected himself. Is. Not was. His son was alive. Probably. Somewhere in the world, living a life that Red knew almost nothing about. The last real conversation they'd had was 10 years ago. Michael had been 18 then, fresh out of high school, standing in the driveway of a house that had never really been a home. Red had been in uniform, preparing for another deployment. Iraq, or was it Afghanistan? They blurred together after a while. Michael had said something about Sarah, Red's wife, Michael's mother, something about cancer and treatment and needing his father there. And Red had said something about duty and mission and how the Marine Corps needed him. And Michael had said something that Red still heard in his nightmares. You know what, Dad? You're right. The Marines do need you, because we don't. Sarah died while Red was overseas. He made it back for the funeral 3 days late. Michael hadn't spoken to him, not at the service, not at the reception, not when Red tried to approach him outside the church. Michael had just looked at him with eyes that were dry and empty and full of something worse than hate. Disappointment. Red set the photo down carefully, precisely, exactly parallel to the edge of the cot. Old habits, everything in its place, everything squared away. The Marine Corps had taught him that, had taught him how to organize his life into neat, controllable squares. It just hadn't taught him how to be a father. A knock on the door frame. Red didn't turn around. He knew the footfall, the particular rhythm of the knock. Chaplain Morrison, friend for 20 years, maybe more. one of the few people who still bothered to knock on Red's door. "You packed yet?" Morrison's voice was Georgia low country, warm and slow like honey. "Getting there. That's what you said yesterday. It's what I'll probably say tomorrow, too." Morrison came in without invitation, sat down on the opposite cot. He was 55, lean and weathered like driftwood. His uniform was crisp despite the heat. Unlike Red, Morrison seemed to have figured out how to stay sharp in the desert. Or maybe he just cared more about appearances. "Your retirement ceremony is in 18 hours, Morrison said. "You know that, right?" "I know. 36 years of service. That's something." "It's something." Morrison was quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that meant he was about to say something Red didn't want to hear. Chaplains were good at that. They could say the hard things because they had God on their side, and you couldn't really get mad at God. Or you could, but it didn't change anything. "You call Michael yet?" Morrison asked. Red's jaw tightened. "No." "You gonna?" "I don't know." "Red, come on. The man deserves to know his fathers are retiring. Might be, I don't know, might be a bridge." Red finally turned to look at his friend. Morrison's face showed concern, genuine and unguarded. It made Red tired just looking at it. Caring about things was exhausting. "Morrison, you ever think about the choices you make? The big ones, I mean. The ones that define your whole life? Every day, brother. Every single day. I chose this." Red gestured around the barracks, but he meant more than just the room. He meant the whole thing, the wars, the deployments, the missions that never seemed to end. "I chose the Marines over my family, over my wife, over my son. You chose to serve. I chose wrong." Morrison leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Red, you saved lives, hundreds of lives. Maybe thousands if you count all the indirect stuff. The paths you cleared, the equipment you maintained, the young Marines you trained. That's not nothing. It's not a son either." "No," Morrison admitted, "it's not." They sat in silence. Outside, the base was coming alive with morning activity. Vehicles rumbling, voices calling. The eternal rhythm of military life. Red had been part of that rhythm for so long, he didn't know how to exist outside it. What did retired people do? He'd seen them, of course. Old men at VFW halls, telling stories that got bigger every year. Golf courses, fishing boats. Grandchildren they spoiled because they hadn't been around to spoil their own children. Red didn't know if he had grandchildren. Michael could be married, could have kids, could have a whole life that Red knew nothing about. Probably did. The radio on Red's belt crackled. A voice, official and urgent. "Captain Sullivan, report to TOC immediately. Colonel Davidson requests your presence." Red and Morrison exchanged glances. "Thought you were retired," Morrison said. "Not for 18 more hours." "They gonna let you have those hours?" Red stood, clipped the radio back on his belt, and reached for his cover. "Guess we'll find out." The Tactical Operations Center was controlled chaos, the way it always was. Screens showing drone feeds, maps covered in grease pencil markings, radio operators speaking in the clipped, urgent language of people managing life and death in real time. Colonel Jackson Davidson stood at the center of it all. He was 52 with the kind of face that looked like it had been carved from weathered oak. He'd been commanding officers in combat zones since before some of his Marines were born. When he saw Red enter, his expression shifted from command focus to something more personal. Concern, maybe regret. "Red, thanks for coming." "Sir, what do you need?" Davidson gestured to a map table. Red followed and Morrison trailed behind, uninvited but unchallenged. Chaplains had that privilege. They could go anywhere, hear anything, and no one questioned it. The map showed the Helmand province, a region Red knew intimately. He'd cleared mines here before, twice in previous deployments. The terrain was unforgiving, full of wadis and compounds, and 1,000 places for an enemy to hide. Davidson's finger landed on a spot marked in red. "Sangin Valley, you know it?" "Intimately. Devil's Corridor, we used to call it." "Still do. Bravo Company 200 Marines went in 4 days ago to clear Taliban positions. They got hit hard, real hard. Now they're pinned down here." Davidson's finger moved to a small compound symbol. "Taliban have them surrounded, dug in positions, probably 100+ fighters." Red studied the map. The tactical situation was obvious. Bravo Company was in a kill box, and the only way to reach them was through 15 kilometers of some of the most heavily mined terrain in Afghanistan. "Air support?" Red asked. "Sandstorm rolled in yesterday, visibility 0. Weather says it's going to last another 4 days minimum. Can't fly in this." "Supply drop?" "Same problem. We got one bird through on day 2, but it was damn near suicide. Pilot said he won't try again until the weather clears. Red could see where this was going. He'd been in the military long enough to recognize when a commander was building up to a request. The kind of request that came with body bags and medals and lives changed forever. How long do they have? Red asked. Davidson's jaw worked. Ammunition is at 40% and dropping. They're rationing food. Water's going to be the real problem. Maybe 72 hours before they can't sustain defensive operations. And you want to send a breacher team? I want to send your breacher team. Red looked at the map for a long moment. 15 kilometers through mined terrain. In the best conditions, with a full crew and perfect equipment, it would take 2 days minimum. Add in Taliban ambushes, equipment failures, and the 1,000 things that could go wrong in a combat zone, and the odds got worse. Much worse. Sir, with respect, I'm retiring in 17 hours. I know. There are other breacher teams, none with your experience. Red, you have got a 100% survival rate for your crews. 36 years, dozens of missions, and every single Marine you've commanded has gone home alive. That's something special, Red. That's why I'm asking you. Red felt the weight of those words. 100%. It was true. In 36 years of service, through multiple wars and countless dangerous missions, he'd never lost a crew member. He'd been wounded twice himself, but his people always came home. It was the one thing he'd done right. Who's my crew? Red asked. Davidson looked relieved, like he'd been holding his breath. He gestured to another officer who pulled up personnel files on a tablet. Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison, driver, you know him. Red nodded. Bulldog. They'd worked together for 8 years across multiple deployments. Jake was solid, 34 years old, built like a linebacker, could drive anything with tracks or wheels. Good Marine, good man. Corporal Tommy Chen, breacher specialist, MIT dropout, top of his class in explosive ordnance disposal, first combat deployment. Red frowned. First deployment? He's good, Red, really good, just green. Green gets people killed, which is why I'm sending you with him. Break him in right. Red let it go. And the gunner? Lance Corporal Luis Hernandez, 22 years old, come up from East LA, enlisted to get away from gang activity. Excellent marksman. Bit of an adrenaline junkie, but he follows orders. 3 men, 3 lives that would depend on every decision Red made for the next 72 hours. 3 families that would either get their sons and fathers back or get a folded flag and a letter from a colonel who barely knew their names. Red thought about Michael, thought about the photo gathering dust on his cot, thought about all the years he'd chosen missions over family, duty over love, the Marine Corps over everything else. And he thought about 200 Marines in Sangin Valley running out of time. If Michael were there, Red thought, if Michael were one of those 200, he'd want the best breacher commander in the Marines coming to get him. He'd want someone who brought people home. When do we leave? Red asked. Davidson's relief was visible. 6 hours. Get your crew, brief them, prep the vehicle. Red, thank you. Red nodded and turned to leave. Morrison followed him out of the Teok and into the brutal Afghan sun. You sure about this? Morrison asked. No, but when am I ever sure? Red, you're 1 day from going home, from maybe fixing things with Michael. Are you really going to risk that for one more mission? Red stopped walking, looked at his friend, and for just a moment, let the mask slip. Morrison, if I don't go, they'll send Lieutenant Hayes. He's 25 years old, good kid, decent commander. And he'll probably get half his crew killed trying to reach Bravo Company, maybe more. That's not your responsibility. Yeah, Red said quietly. It is. It's always been my responsibility. That's the whole problem, isn't it? I'm so damn good at this job that I can't stop doing it. Even when I should, even when it costs me everything. Morrison had no answer for that. Sometimes even chaplains ran out of words. Red found his crew at the motor pool, working on the M1150 assault breacher vehicle that would either save them or kill them in the next 3 days. The M1150 was a beast. Built on the chassis of an M1 Abrams main battle tank, it weighed 50 tons and looked like something from a science fiction movie. The turret had been removed and replaced with a low-profile superstructure covered in explosive reactive armor. The mine plow, a massive V-shaped blade, jutted from the front like the horn of some mechanical rhinoceros. Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison was underneath the vehicle, cursing creatively at the hydraulic system. He was a big man, thick through the shoulders and chest, with hands that could palm a basketball and a face that had been broken and reset more than once. He'd played football at a small college in Texas before the Marines, and he moved with an athlete's confidence. "Bulldog," Red called out. "You got a minute?" Jake rolled out from under the vehicle on a maintenance creeper, stood up, and wiped his hands on a rag that was already black with grease. When he saw Red, he smiled. "Captain, thought you were supposed to be packing. Change of plans. We've got a mission." Jake's smile faded. "What kind of mission?" "The kind that probably gets us killed." Jake nodded slowly. "Okay, when?" 6 hours. "Then I better make sure this hydraulic system doesn't fail at a really inconvenient time." He paused. "You know, like when we're driving over a minefield." Red almost smiled, almost. "Where's Chen and Hernandez?" "Tommy's in the armory, checking breaching charges. Luis is at the range doing what Luis does." "Which is?" "Shooting things until they stop being things." Red found Corporal Tommy Chen in the armory, surrounded by enough explosives to level a city block. He was young, maybe 25, with the kind of lean, nervous energy that came from having a mind that moved faster than the world around it. His uniform was immaculate despite the dust that coated everything in Afghanistan. His hands moved with practiced precision as he inspected Miklik line charges. "Corporal Chen." Tommy snapped to attention so fast he nearly knocked over a rack of grenades. "Sir, Captain Sullivan, sir." "At ease, Marine, we need to talk." Tommy relaxed marginally, which meant he went from vibrating at high frequency to merely trembling slightly. "Is this about the mission, sir?" Word traveled fast in the Corps. "Yeah, you been briefed?" "Only that we're going out. No details yet." Red gave him the abbreviated version. "Bravo Company surrounded, 72 hours of ammunition left, 15 kilometers of mined terrain, probable Taliban ambushes every step of the way." He watched Tommy's face as he talked, looking for the signs of fear that would tell him this Marine wasn't ready. But Tommy just listened, nodded, and asked good questions. "What's the mine density estimate? What kind of ordnance are we expecting? Do we have current intelligence on Taliban anti-armor capabilities?" Smart questions. Technical questions. The kind of questions that showed Chen was thinking about the mission, not about dying. "Why'd you enlist, Tommy?" Red asked. The question clearly caught Chen off guard. "Sir, you had MIT. You could have done anything, made a fortune in Silicon Valley. Why'd you choose this?" Tommy was quiet for a moment, considering. When he spoke, his voice was softer. "My dad was a Marine, Vietnam. He died when I was 12. Heart attack. But before he died, he told me that the only time he felt like his life mattered was when he was serving, when he was doing something bigger than himself." He looked down at the explosives in his hands. "I tried the civilian world, sir, made good money, had a nice apartment, dated pretty girls, and I was so damn bored I wanted to scream. So I dropped out and enlisted. Figured I'd find out if my dad was right." "And did you?" Tommy looked up, met Red's eyes. "I don't know yet, sir. Ask me after this mission." Red found Luis Hernandez exactly where Jake said he'd be. The range. The crack of an M250 caliber machine gun echoed across the desert as Red approached. Luis was behind the weapon, methodically working through a belt of ammunition, putting rounds into targets at 400 meters. Every shot hit. Luis Hernandez was small, maybe 5'7", with the wiry build of someone who'd grown up hungry and learned to fight for everything. His hands were covered in tattoos that he'd gotten before the Marines and covered with the Corps' ink afterwards. East LA gang signs covered by eagle, globe, and anchor. When the belt ran dry, Luis cleared the weapon with practiced efficiency, then noticed Red approaching. He came to attention, but there was a looseness to it that spoke of someone who'd learned military discipline later in life. "Captain, Lance Corporal, mind if I watch?" "Free country, sir, or that's what they tell me." Luis loaded another belt, charged the weapon, and went back to work. Red watched in silence. The kid was good. Better than good. He was a natural, the kind of shooter who didn't have to think about windage or elevation or lead time. He just pointed and hit. After the second belt, Red spoke. "You scared?" Luis didn't look away from his weapon maintenance. "Of what, sir?" "The mission. Mines, Taliban, dying." "Should I be?" "Most people would be." Luis set down the barrel brush he'd been using. Looked at Red with eyes that had seen too much too young. "Sir, I grew up on streets where you could die for wearing the wrong color shirt, where 13-year-olds carried guns and used them. I've been to 6 funerals for friends who didn't make it to 20. The Taliban, mines. At least here, I know who the enemy is. At least here, when I shoot back, nobody calls me a criminal." "That why you enlisted? To shoot people legally?" Louise smiled, but there was no humor in it. "I enlisted because my mom told me she was tired of wondering every night if I'd come home in a body bag or a police car. Marine Corps was supposed to be safer. And is it? Don't know yet, sir. Ask me after this mission. Same answer Tommy had given. Different words, same sentiment. These kids were looking for meaning, for purpose, for proof that their lives mattered. And Red was about to take them into a situation where they might not come back. Just like he'd done for 36 years. Just like he'd do until someone finally stopped him. The mission briefing was held in a tent that smelled like canvas and sweat. Red stood at a map table with his three-man crew and Colonel Davidson. Outside, the sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of orange and red, blood colors. Gentlemen, Davidson began, let me be direct. This mission has approximately a 40% chance of success. That's being optimistic. The route to Bravo Company runs through some of the most heavily mined terrain in Afghanistan. Intelligence estimates between 300 and 400 mines and IEDs along your path. He traced a line on the map with his finger. You'll be moving through here, what we call Devil's Corridor. Narrow valley, steep sides, no room for error. Taliban knows it's the only viable approach to Bravo Company's position, which means they'll be waiting. What about support? Jake asked. You'll have 2 M1 Abrams as escort for the first 10 kilometers. After that, they'll have to peel off. Terrain gets too narrow for 3 vehicles. You'll also have a squad of engineers in an M113 for the first phase, but same problem. Eventually, it's just you 4 in the breacher. Air cover? Tommy asked. Not in this weather. Sandstorm is predicted to last at least 96 hours. Even if it clears early, we're talking limited visibility for any close air support. So we're on our own, Luis said. Davidson nodded. Essentially, yes. Red studied the map, doing calculations in his head. Distance, terrain, mine density, equipment capabilities, human endurance. The math didn't look good. 72 hours, Red said. That's how long Bravo Company has. We need to cover 15 kilometers through mine terrain in less than 3 days. Correct. Average speed with mine clearing operations, ideal conditions, is about 2 kilometers per hour. But that's not accounting for ambushes, equipment failures, or the fact that we'll have to stop for rest. I know the math, Red. Then you know we're looking at the edge of possible, maybe over the edge. Davidson met his eyes. That's why I asked for you. Red looked at his crew. Jake, solid and dependable with a wife and a baby due any day. Tommy, brilliant and untested, looking for meaning in the chaos. Luis, hard and hungry, trying to outrun a past that would never quite let go. And him, 58 years old, 36 years of service, 100% survival rate. One more mission. We'll do it, Red said. They spent the next 4 hours preparing the M1150. Every system was checked and double-checked. The mine plow, capable of withstanding multiple mine detonations. The Miklik line charges, rocket-propelled explosives that could clear a path through a minefield in seconds. The explosive reactive armor that covered the vehicle like scales on a dragon. The M1150 wasn't pretty, but it was functional, built for one purpose, to break through obstacles that would stop anything else. To make a path where no path existed. Red could relate. As the sun set and the desert temperature began its nightly plunge, Red found himself alone with the vehicle for a moment. He placed his hand on the armored hull, felt the residual heat from the day's sun, and thought about all the missions he'd run in vehicles like this. All the paths he'd cleared, all the obstacles he'd overcome, all the people he'd brought home, except the ones that mattered most. He pulled out his phone, old model, barely used. There were 3 numbers in the contacts. Morrison, Colonel Davidson, and one labeled simply Michael. Red stared at that name for a long time. His thumb hovered over the call button. What would he say? Hey, son, I know we haven't talked in 10 years, but I'm about to drive through a minefield and I thought you should know. Sorry I missed your childhood, your mother's death, and every important moment of your life, but I might die tomorrow, so I figured I'd call. The cursor blinked. Red's thumb moved, and then Morrison's voice cut through the darkness. Red, Colonel wants to see you, says it's important. Red put the phone away. Some calls could wait. Some calls waited forever. In the Tactical Operations Center, Davidson was standing over a radio operator, his face grim in the blue light of the displays. When he saw Red, he gestured him over. We've got new intelligence, Davidson said. It's not good. He handed Red a tablet showing a personnel roster, Bravo Company. 200 names, ranks, positions. Officers highlighted in yellow. Red's eyes scanned the list. Company commander, executive officer, first sergeant, And then, in the section listing platoon commanders, a name that made the world stop. First Lieutenant Michael J. Sullivan, second platoon commander. Red's hands started to shake. He looked up at Davidson, unable to form words. "I'm sorry, Red, I just found out myself. Michael requested transfer from Camp Pendleton 3 months ago. Fast-tracked deployment. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know your son was with Bravo Company." Red looked back at the tablet, at the name. Michael J. Sullivan, his son, his boy. The child he'd abandoned for duty and honor, and 36 years of choosing the mission over family. And now that choice had brought him here. To this moment. To this mission. His son was in Sangjin Valley, surrounded by enemies, running out of ammunition and time, and Red was the only person who could reach him. "Red," Davidson said carefully, "if you want to pull out, I understand. This is different. No one would blame you for stepping back." Red couldn't speak, could barely breathe. He thought about the phone in his pocket, about the call he hadn't made, about 10 years of silence and a lifetime of choosing wrong. "Red?" He looked up at Davidson. His voice, when it came, was steady despite everything. "We leave in 2 hours. I need to brief my crew." "Are you sure?" "My son is out there, Colonel. For the first time in his life, he actually needs me." "Yeah, I'm sure." Red gathered his crew in the maintenance bay. They stood around the M1150, tired already, and the mission hadn't even started. He needed to tell them. They deserved to know what they were really getting into. "Change of plans," Red said. "Or maybe just additional information. Bravo Company, the people we're going to rescue, one of the officers is..." He paused, forced the words out. "One of them is my son." The silence was absolute. Jake recovered first. "Your son, Michael?" "Yeah." "Holy shit, sir. I didn't know he was in country. Hell, I didn't know he enlisted." "Neither did I." Tommy spoke up. "Sir, does this change the mission parameters?" Red looked at the young Marine. "Smart kid, right question. It changes why I'm going. It doesn't change how we do the job. We're still bringing all 200 Marines home. We're just... One of them happens to be mine." Luis asked the hard question. "Sir, if it comes down to a choice, if we can't save everyone, are you going to prioritize your son?" Red had been asking himself that same question for the last 30 minutes, and he still didn't have a good answer. But he gave the only answer a Marine commander could give. "We save everyone. That's the mission. That's always been the mission." "But sir," Tommy pressed, "if circumstances force a choice, we need to know. We need to know where your head is." Red met their eyes, one by one. Jake, who'd followed him through fire and death and never questioned an order. Tommy, green and smart, and needing to trust his commander. Luis, hard and practical, and willing to say what others wouldn't. "Here's the truth," Red said. "I've been a shitty father. I chose the Corps over my family for 36 years. I missed my son's childhood. I missed my wife's death. I have been, in every way that matters, absent from the life of the person I should have loved most." He took a breath. "So yeah, part of me wants to say I'll do anything to save Michael, wants to prioritize him above everything else. Because maybe, just maybe, if I bring him home, I can start to fix what I broke." He looked at the M1150, at the beast that would carry them into hell. "But that's not how this works. We're Marines. We don't leave people behind. We don't prioritize one life over another. We save them all, or we die trying. That's the code. That's who we are." He turned back to his crew. "Michael is my son, and I will do everything in my power to bring him home. But I'll do everything in my power to bring all of you home too. And those 200 Marines, everyone comes back. That's the promise I've kept for 36 years. That's the promise I'll keep now." Jake stepped forward, put a hand on Red's shoulder. "Then let's go get your son, sir. Let's bring him home." They loaded up in darkness. The M1150's engine was a turbine, the same kind that powered the Abrams tank. When it spun up, it sounded like a jet engine, a high-pitched whine that built to a roar. 1,500 horsepower, enough to push 50 tons of steel through anything. Almost anything. Red sat in the commander's position, surrounded by screens and controls. The mine plow joystick was under his right hand, radio controls on his left. Vision ports gave him a limited view of the world outside, but mostly he'd be relying on cameras and sensors. Jake was in the driver's position, hands on the controls, ready to muscle the vehicle through whatever terrain they encountered. Tommy was at the breacher station, monitoring the MICLIC system and explosive ordnance. Luis was in the gunner's position, behind the M250 caliber machine gun that was their only real weapon. 4 men, 1 vehicle, 15 kilometers of hell. Red keyed the radio. "Breacher 6 to all stations. We are moving out." The convoy rolled into the Afghan night. 2 M1 Abrams tanks in the lead, their 120mm cannons sweeping the darkness. Then the M1150 mine plow lowered, sensors active. Behind them, an M113 personnel carrier with the engineer squad. They drove through darkness toward a battle that had started without them, toward 200 Marines who were counting on people they'd never met, toward a son who probably they thought his father had forgotten him. Red switched his radio to the frequency used by Bravo Company. He shouldn't. It would break protocol. But he needed to hear. And there it was, his son's voice. Older now, harder, worn down by combat and responsibility, but still recognizably Michael. "Bravo 2, adjust fire, bearing 270, range 400, Taliban in the open. Take them down." Professional, calm, in control. Michael sounded like a good officer. Red felt a surge of pride that he had no right to feel. He hadn't earned the right to be proud. He'd earned nothing when it came to his son, but he was proud anyway. Red didn't transmit, didn't let Michael know he was coming. There would be time for that later. If they survived. If they both survived. The first mine detonated at kilometer 3. The mine plow took the brunt of it, a shaped charge designed to punch through vehicle armor. But the plow was designed for this, built to absorb and deflect. The explosion was tremendous, a flash of white light and a pressure wave that made Red's ears ring even through the armor. Jake held the vehicle steady, professional hands keeping them on course despite the blast. "Plow integrity," Red called out. Tommy checked his monitors. 95%. Good detonation. We can sustain." They kept moving, meter by meter, kilometer by kilometer, the mine plow carving a path through the Afghan soil. Every few hundred meters, another mine. Some detected by sensors and avoided. Others detonated by the plow, each explosion a reminder of what would happen if they made a mistake. At kilometer 8, as the sun began to light the eastern horizon, they stopped for the first major obstacle. A wadi, a dry riverbed that cut across their path. Intel said it was mined, heavily. This was where they'd used the Miklik for the first time. Tommy prepared the system, his hands steady despite the danger. The Miklik was essentially a rocket that carried an explosive line charge. Fire the rocket across the minefield, detonate the charges, and clear a path. In theory, Red studied the wadi through the vision ports. It was maybe 100 meters across, steep sides, rocky bottom, perfect ambush terrain. And if there were as many mines as Intel suggested, driving through was suicide. "Miklik ready," Tommy reported. "On my mark," Red said. He took a breath, thought about Michael waiting in Sangin Valley, thought about 200 Marines counting on them, thought about 36 years of bringing people home. Fire. The rocket screamed out of its launcher, trailing the explosive line charge behind it like a deadly tail. It flew across the wadi in seconds, the line settling across the rocky terrain. For a moment, everything was still. Then Tommy hit the detonation switch. The world became fire and thunder. 1,750 pounds of C4 detonated simultaneously, a line of explosions that merged into one continuous roar. Dirt and rock fountained into the air. The pressure wave hit the M1150 like a physical force, rocking the 50-ton vehicle on its suspension. When the dust cleared, there was a path, 8 meters wide, 100 meters long, cleared of mines and obstacles. "Move," Red ordered. Jake drove them into the wadi, down the steep side, across the cleared path, up the other side. Every meter felt like tempting fate, but they made it through, all of them, still alive, still bringing people home. They were 10 kilometers in when the radio crackled with a new voice. Not tactical chatter, not mission updates. A voice that made Red's heart stop. Any station. This is Bravo 2 actual. Situation critical. Under heavy assault. Ammunition at 30%. Request immediate assistance." Red's hand moved to the transmit button before he could stop himself. "Bravo 2 actual. This is Breacher 6. Silence. Then, "Breacher 6, Bravo 2, go ahead." Red tried to find the words. How do you talk to a son you haven't spoken to in 10 years? What do you say when you've failed at everything except the one thing that might save his life? "Mike," Red said, voice rough, "it's Dad." The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Then, "Dad, you're the Breacher team?" "Yeah, son, I am. I didn't know you were still in." "I'm not. Today was supposed to be my last day. I was retiring. Was? Red looked at the desert ahead, at the kilometers of mines and death that lay between him and his son. Not anymore. I'm coming to get you, Mike. Hold on. Another pause. Red could hear gunfire in the background of Michael's transmission. Close gunfire. Dad, turn back. This is a trap. Taliban are everywhere. You'll die trying to reach us. That's not happening, son. Dad, please, you don't owe me anything. You don't have to do this. Red closed his eyes, saw that photograph on his cot. That 8-year-old boy in the oversized uniform, smiling with pure joy. Yeah, Red said softly. I do. I'll see you soon, Mike. He released the transmit button, opened his eyes, looked at his crew, who were all very carefully not looking at him. Let's move out, Red said. We've got a schedule to keep. They drove on into the rising sun. Behind them, the path they'd cleared through the minefield. Ahead, more miles, more mines, more danger. And somewhere at the end of that path, a son waiting for a father who'd always chosen duty over family. This time, Red thought, maybe he could choose both. This time, maybe he could finally get it right. The voice on the radio, his son's voice, stayed with Red as they pushed deeper into Devil's Corridor. Michael, 28 years old now, an officer, a leader of Marines, everything Red had ever been, but maybe better. Maybe without the broken pieces. Maybe? The sun climbed higher. The temperature inside the M1150 rose despite the air conditioning. Red could feel the sweat running down his back, pooling at the base of his spine. His hands, scarred and weathered, never left the controls. Jake drove with machine precision. Tommy monitored sensors with focused intensity. Luis scanned the ridgelines, looking for threats that would probably come whether he saw them first or not. They were 12 kilometers in when the hydraulic system warning light came on. Red saw it immediately. Temperature climbing, pressure fluctuating. The system that controlled the mine plow was starting to fail. Had been failing, probably, since they started. He'd noticed the sluggish response early on, but had hoped it would hold. Hope wasn't a plan. Tommy, Red said, hydraulic status? Not good, sir. Temperature at 92 Celsius. Recommended maximum is 85. Pressure is holding, but erratic. How long do we have? Hard to say. Could be hours, could be minutes. Red made the calculation. They had 3 kilometers left to Sangan Valley. 3 kilometers through the most heavily mined section of Devil's Corridor. If the hydraulic system failed completely, they'd lose the mine plow. And without the plow, they were just a slow-moving target. Can we cool it down? Jake asked. Not without stopping for at least 2 hours, Tommy said. And even then, it's only a temporary fix. The seals are degrading. It's going to fail eventually. Red thought about Michael. Thought about ammunition at 30% and dropping. Thought about 200 Marines who didn't have 2 hours to spare. We push through, Red said. Monitor it close. If it starts to cascade, we'll reassess. But we don't stop. Sir, Tommy said carefully, if the hydraulics fail catastrophically while we're in a minefield, we're stuck. No plow means no way forward. I know. Just wanted to make sure we're all clear on the risk. Crystal clear, Marine. Now let's move. They drove on. The hydraulic temperature climbed. 93 Celsius, 94. The mine plow's response got slower, more sluggish. Red compensated, adjusting his technique, working around the degrading system. This was what 3 decades of experience bought you. The ability to keep a failing machine running on skill and stubbornness when newer operators would have already stopped. At 13 kilometers with 2 kilometers to go, the radio crackled with a new voice. Not Michael, not Colonel Davidson, a voice speaking English with a Middle Eastern accent, educated, precise. Captain Marcus Sullivan, I know you can hear me. Red's blood went cold. Taliban didn't usually have operational intelligence this good. They shouldn't know his name. They definitely shouldn't be broadcasting on encrypted military frequencies. You are wondering how I know who you are, the voice continued. I will tell you, I am Colonel Khalid Massoud, formerly of the Iraqi army. You killed my unit in Basra in 1991. Desert Storm, you Americans called it. I survived. Barely. And I have waited 30 years for this moment. Red remembered Basra. Remembered the Iraqi bunkers they'd reduced to rubble. Remembered the fire and the screaming and the fog of war that made everything unclear. But he didn't remember anyone surviving. Intel had said they'd wiped out the entire position. Intel had been wrong before. Your son is here, Captain Sullivan. First Lieutenant Michael Sullivan. 2nd Platoon, Bravo Company. I know this because I planned this. I lured his company into this valley. I surrounded them. I have been waiting for you to come save him. Jake looked at Red, face grim. Tommy had stopped monitoring his screens, listening. Luis's hands had tightened on the machine gun controls. You are thinking this is about revenge, Khalid continued. About me killing you for what you did to my men. But no, that would be too simple. I want you to suffer as I suffered. I want you to watch your son die, knowing you are too late, knowing that despite all your skill, all your experience, you failed the one person who mattered most. The transmission ended, static filled the channel. Red sat in silence for a long moment. Then he keyed the radio to Bravo Company's frequency. Mike, you there? Dad? Yeah, we heard the transmission. Dad, you need to turn back. This is bigger than us. Khalid has been planning this for months, maybe years. You're walking into a kill box. How many Taliban? Best estimate? 50 to 70 fighters. They have odd rockets, heavy machine guns, mortars, and the terrain is on their side. Red looked at his crew, 3 men who'd signed up to rescue strangers, who were now walking into a trap designed specifically to break him. Jake, Red said, your wife is about to have a baby. Tommy, you're on your first deployment. Luis, you've got your whole life ahead of you. If any of you want to stay back, I'll understand. This isn't your fight. Jake spoke first. Sir, with respect, shut the hell up. We're Marines. This is exactly our fight. Tommy nodded. Besides, I still haven't figured out if my dad was right. About life mattering when you serve. Turning back now seems like a bad way to find out. Luis just smiled. Sir, I grew up in a place where people died for nothing. At least here, if I die, it's for something, for someone. Let's go get your son. Red felt something in his chest tighten. Pride, gratitude, fear for these young men who trusted him with their lives. All right then, Red said. Let's finish this. Mike, we're 2 clicks out. Hold your position. We're coming through. Dad? Michael's voice cracked. I love you. I should have said it before. Should have said it years ago, but I love you. Red had to force the words past the lump in his throat. I love you too, son, and I'm sorry for everything. But we'll have time to talk about it later. After I bring you home. He switched channels back to his crew. All stations, combat speed, we're going in hot. The M1150 surged forward, turbine engine screaming. The mine plow carved through the earth, sensors screaming warnings about mines ahead, mines to the left, mines everywhere. But there was no time for caution now. No time for careful clearing operations. Only speed, only violence of action, only the desperate hope that skill and luck would be enough. They hit the first mine at full speed. The plow absorbed it, barely. The second mine, 50 meters later, took out one of the explosive reactive armor panels on the front slope. The third mine detonated under the left track, and for a terrifying moment, Red thought they were going to throw the track and be immobilized. But Jake held it together, kept them moving, kept them alive. At 14 kilometers, with 1 kilometer to go, the hydraulic system finally failed. Red felt it go, the controls going slack in his hands. The mine plow dropped, useless now, dragging in the dirt. Plow's dead, Red announced. Tommy, we're going to need the last Miklik. Jake, when I give the word, you're going to need to make a run for it. Full speed, straight through, no stopping. Sir, Tommy said, without the plow to detonate mines in our path, we're going to be relying entirely on armor. 1 anti-tank mine in the right place and we're done. I know, but Michael and 200 Marines don't have time for us to figure out a better option. We go now or we don't go at all. Red looked at the path ahead, could see Bravo Company's position in the distance, could see the smoke from fires and the flash of gunfire, could see his son somewhere in that chaos, could see the end of 36 years of choosing wrong. Miklik ready, Tommy reported. Fire. The rocket screamed out. The line charge deployed. And for the last time, Red watched 1,750 pounds of high explosive clear a path where no path should exist. Go, Red ordered. Jake, everything you've got, get us to that perimeter. The M1150 lunged forward. 50 tons of steel moving at 40 miles per hour faster than it was ever designed to go. Alarms screamed. The engine temperature redlined. The tracks threw up rooster tails of dirt and rocks. Bullets pinged off the armor. RPGs streaked past, missing by meters. Tommy threw grenades through the vision ports. Luis fired the 50 cal until the barrel glowed red. And Jake drove like a demon, weaving between obstacles, crushing through barriers, refusing to stop, refusing to slow down, refusing to let anything keep him from delivering his captain to his son. They crashed through to the final Taliban position, literally ran over a technical truck that tried to block their path, and burst into Bravo Company's defensive perimeter in a shower of sparks and smoke and the screaming of a turbine engine that had been pushed past every limit. Jake slammed on the brakes. The M1150 skidded to a stop. Alarms were going off everywhere. Fire suppression systems activated automatically. Something was burning, but Red didn't care. He popped the hatch and climbed out into the Afghan sun. Marines surrounded the vehicle, cheering, shouting, some of them crying. They looked like they'd been through hell, dirty, exhausted, wounded, but alive. And pushing through the crowd, running despite the limp Red could see in his left leg, was Michael. His son, 28 years old, taller than Red now, thinner, harder, with a face that had seen combat and death and all the things that changed a person forever. But still his son. They met in the middle of the compound. For a moment, neither could speak. Then Michael stepped forward and hugged his father, and Red held his son for the first time in 10 years, and the gunfire and explosions and chaos faded to background noise. "You came," Michael whispered. "You actually came." "I promised," Red said. "For once in my life, I kept a promise to you." They stood there, father and son, while around them Marines prepared for evacuation, and the battle continued and the world kept spinning. But for just that moment, none of it mattered. For just that moment, Red had chosen family over mission, had chosen his son over duty. And for the first time in 36 years, it felt like the right choice. Like the only choice. Like coming home. The reunion lasted exactly 43 seconds. Then a mortar round hit the compound wall 20 meters away, and the war came rushing back. Red felt Michael pull away, saw his son transform from vulnerable young man back into Lieutenant Sullivan, platoon commander, responsible for 40 Marines who were counting on him to keep them alive. "Dad, we need to move. Taliban are going to hit us hard now that they know reinforcements arrived." Michael's voice had shifted, professional, clipped, the voice of command. Red recognized it. He'd used that same voice for 36 years. "What's your tactical situation?" Red asked, falling into the familiar rhythm of military assessment. Feelings could wait. Survival came first. Michael pulled him toward a command post, really just a sandbag corner with a radio and a map spread across ammo crates. Other Marines moved with practiced efficiency around them, checking weapons, redistributing ammunition, preparing for the next assault. "We've got 187 effectives out of 200, Michael said. 13 KIA, 23 wounded. Ammunition is critical. We're down to maybe 300 rounds per rifle, 2 belts per machine gun. No grenades left. Mortars are Winchester." Winchester. Military speak for out of ammunition. Red had heard that word too many times in his career. Medical supplies. Almost gone. Corpsman is doing triage with field dressings and prayer. Michael pointed to the map. "Taliban have us surrounded, 3 sides with heavy weapons. We've been holding this compound for 4 days, but every assault they learn our defensive positions better. Next time they come, they're going to break through." Red studied the map, his mind automatically calculating fields of fire, defensive depth, fallback positions. The compound was small, maybe 50 meters across, mud brick walls that would stop small arms but not much else. One way in, one way out. A perfect kill box. Evac plan? "Birds can't fly in this sandstorm. We've got maybe another day before weather clears enough for extraction. Question is whether we can last that long." "We will," Red said with more confidence than he felt. Michael looked at his father, and for just a moment the professional mask slipped. "Dad, I need to know. Why are you here? Not the mission. I mean, why you specifically? You were retiring. You should be on a plane back to the States right now." Red wanted to give him the simple answer. Duty. Mission. Because Marines don't leave Marines behind. All true, but not the whole truth. "Because I owed you," Red said quietly. "For 36 years, I chose this over you, over your mother, over everything that should have mattered. When I found out you were here, that you were in danger, I couldn't walk away. Not again." "You didn't know I enlisted?" "No, and that's on me, too. What kind of father doesn't know his own son joined the Marines?" An explosion interrupted them, closer this time. The compound shook. Dust rained from the ceiling of their improvised command post. "We should continue this conversation later," Michael said, "when people aren't actively trying to kill us." "Agreed. What do you need from me?" Right now, I need that M1150 operational. If we're going to break out of here, we'll need it to clear a path. Red winced. About that, the hydraulic system is shot. Mine plow is non-functional. We can still move, but we can't clear mines anymore. Michael's face went carefully neutral. Red knew that look. Had used it himself 1,000 times when receiving news that fundamentally changed the tactical picture. When the situation went from bad to something much worse. So we're stuck here. Until the weather clears and air evac can get in. Yeah. Dad, we don't have the ammunition to hold for another day. Then we'll make do with what we have. It's what Marines do. Michael almost smiled. Sarah used to say that, Mom. She'd say Marines always make do, usually right before you deployed and left us alone again. The words hit harder than any mortar round. Red had no defense against them. They were true. Mike, I know I can't fix 36 years with one conversation in the middle of a firefight, but I need you to know that I'm sorry for all of it, for choosing wrong every single time. You chose duty. That's not wrong. It is when duty cost you your family. Another mortar barrage, heavier this time. The Taliban were finding their range. Michael grabbed his helmet and rifle. We're going to have to table this, Dad. Right now, I need Lieutenant Sullivan, not Michael Sullivan. Can you work with that? Red straightened, shifted mental gears. 36 years of training took over. What do you need, Lieutenant? I need you to take command of the Eastern Wall. Sergeant Morrison and your crew can integrate with 2nd Squad. You've got more combat experience than anyone else here. My Marines are good, but they're tired. They need someone who's seen worse and survived. Consider it done. Dad? Michael caught his arm as Red turned to go. I'm glad you're here, even if the timing sucks. I'm glad. Red gripped his son's shoulder. Wanted to say so much. Settled for, me too, son. The Eastern Wall was exactly as bad as Red expected. 20 Marines, most of them barely old enough to drink legally, holding a position that should have required twice that number. The wall itself was pockmarked with bullet strikes and shrapnel damage. In several places, it had been patched with sandbags that wouldn't stop a determined assault. Jake Morrison, Bulldog, was already there. He'd taken up position with a M240 machine gun, his bulk making the weapon look almost small. When he saw Red, he grinned. Sir, figured you'd end up here. This is where the fun is. That your definition of fun, Sergeant? Beats sitting in the rear with the gear. Tommy Chen was nearby, talking with a Marine corporal about fighting positions and interlocking fields of fire. Even without explosive ordnance to work with, Tommy was making himself useful. That MIT education meant he could think tactically, see the geometry of combat in ways that came harder to others. Luis Hernandez had found a sniper position on top of the highest building in the compound. Red could see him up there, the 50 cal from the M1150 somehow relocated to a better vantage point. Luis had probably carried it himself. The kid was small but determined. Red gathered the Marines at the Eastern Wall, 19 kids and Jake, average age maybe 23. They looked exhausted, filthy, scared but trying hard not to show it. Listen up, Red said, voice carrying without shouting. Command voice, the one that cut through chaos and made people pay attention. I know you're tired. I know you've been in this fight for 4 days, and it feels like it's never going to end. I know some of you are wondering if you're going to make it home. He met their eyes, saw fear there, also determination. The particular kind of stubborn courage that made Marines different. Here's what I know. I've been doing this job for 36 years. I've been in situations worse than this. Not many, but some. And every single time, every single mission, I've brought my people home. 100% survival rate. That's my record. That's my promise. He gestured at the wall, at the desert beyond where Taliban fighters were preparing their next assault. Those bastards out there think they've got us trapped. Think they can grind us down. Maybe they can, but they're going to pay for every meter. They're going to bleed for every minute. And when that weather clears and those helicopters come, every one of you is going to be on them. Wounded, tired, but alive. A lance corporal, couldn't have been more than 20, raised his hand tentatively. Sir, what if the weather doesn't clear in time? Then we hold with what we've got. You know how much ammunition the defenders of Bastogne had during the Battle of the Bulge? Not much more than you've got now, they held. Wake Island, those Marines held against an entire Japanese invasion fleet until they literally ran out of bullets. Then they fought with their hands. Red moved along the wall, making eye contact with each Marine. We're not at that point yet. We've still got rounds in the magazines. We've still got a wall between us and them. We've still got each other. That's enough. It has to be enough because going home isn't an optional. It's mandatory. We all go home. Every single one of us. The young Lance Corporal spoke again. Even you, sir? Especially me. I've got 36 years of mistakes to make up for. I'm not dying in this compound before I get that chance. Jake spoke up from his position. Besides, I've got a baby girl waiting to meet me back home. Born 3 days ago. Haven't even seen a picture yet because comms have been shit. So yeah, we're all making it out of here. Because I'll be damned if my daughter grows up not knowing her father. That got some nods, some grim smiles, shared purpose, shared determination. Red was about to say more when Luis's voice crackled over the radio. Contact, multiple vehicles approaching from the east. Technicals, looks like 4 of them, Taliban dismounting. Estimate 30 to 40 fighters. Here we go, Red thought. Everyone to positions. Conserve ammunition. Aim shots only. Don't fire until I give the command. Let them get close. The Marines moved with practiced efficiency despite their exhaustion. Weapons came up. Safeties clicked off. The wall bristled with rifle barrels and machine gun muzzles. Red took position at a firing port, his M4 rifle feeling familiar in his hands. Through the crack in the wall, he could see the Taliban fighters spreading out. They were smart, using terrain, moving in bounds. Professional. These weren't farmers with AK-47s. These were trained soldiers. Khalid's men. The Taliban advanced to 200 meters. 150, 100. Red keyed his radio. All weapons, fire. The wall erupted. 20 rifles and 3 machine guns opened up simultaneously. The sound was deafening even through Red's ear protection. Brass casings rained down, gleaming in the harsh Afghan sun. Taliban fighters fell, others dove for cover. Return fire sparked against the compound walls. But the Marines had the advantage of prepared positions. It wasn't a fair fight. War never was. Red fired in controlled bursts. 2 rounds, shift aim, 2 more rounds. Years of training made it almost automatic. Breathe, aim, squeeze. The rifle kicked against his shoulder with familiar violence. Through the chaos, Red saw one Taliban fighter moving differently than the others. Older, calmer, directing others with hand signals. Not charging blindly, but maneuvering with purpose. Red lined up the shot, squeezed. The man went down. But immediately, 3 more fighters moved to drag him to cover. And the way they did it, the priority they gave it, told Red something important. That was someone high value, maybe Khalid himself. The assault lasted 10 minutes. Then the Taliban pulled back, leaving their dead and wounded. The Marines on the wall cheered, a ragged sound of exhausted triumph. Cease fire, Red ordered. Ammo check, casualties. The count came back better than he'd hoped. No Marines killed, 2 wounded, both minor. But the ammunition situation was now critical. They'd expended almost a third of their remaining rounds in that one engagement. If the Taliban came again with the same numbers, they'd have to make every bullet count. Jake moved up beside Red. That was the probing attack. Next time they'll come harder. I know. We've got maybe 2 more fights in us before we're throwing rocks. Then we better make those 2 fights count. Red moved through the compound, checking positions, talking to Marines, being visible. Leadership, he'd learned long ago, was as much about presence as orders. Soldiers needed to see their commanders sharing the danger, facing the same risks. He found Michael at the command post coordinating with the other platoon commanders. When Michael saw Red approach, he excused himself. Eastern Wall? Michael asked. Holding. Cost us some ammunition, but we broke their assault. They'll be back. I know. Intelligence, such as it is, suggests Khalid is massing for a major push before nightfall. He knows we're low on supplies. He's going to try to overwhelm us with numbers. Red studied the map, running calculations. Numbers, ammunition, defensive positions. The math wasn't good. What's the weather forecast? Sandstorm is supposed to break by dawn tomorrow. If we can hold through tonight, we might get air evac by noon. That's a long night. Yeah. Michael rubbed his face, fatigue showing through. He'd been commanding these Marines under siege for 4 days with minimal sleep and constant stress. He was running on empty, and Red could see it. When's the last time you slept? Red asked. What day is it? Mike, you need rest. Even a couple hours. Can't. If I sleep, I might not wake up in time for the next assault. These Marines need me alert. They need you functional. Dead on your feet doesn't help anyone. Michael gave him a look that Red recognized, had used himself countless times. The look that said, I appreciate the concern, but I'm the commander here, and I'll decide what I need. Dad, I know you mean well, but I've been doing this job for 3 years. I know my limits. Do you? Because I spent 36 years telling myself the same thing, that I knew my limits, that I could push through anything. And you know what it cost me? I'm not you. The words hung in the air between them, not quite angry, but carrying weight. Years of weight. Red took a breath. Let it out. No, you're not. You're better, smarter. You've got what? 3 years of service? And you're already a platoon commander with Marines who'd follow you into hell. Took me 10 years to earn that kind of trust. Michael's expression softened. Dad, I didn't mean... No, you're right. You're not me, and that's good, because I made a lot of mistakes you don't have to repeat. Red gestured at the compound, at the Marines fighting and bleeding and holding the line. But one thing I learned the hard way is that a commander is only as good as his ability to keep functioning. And that means rest when you can get it. Sleep when there's a lull. Trust your people to wake you if things go sideways. What if I can't? What if I close my eyes and we get hit and someone dies because I wasn't there to make the call? There it was, the fear every commander carried, the weight that never lifted. Then it's not on you. It's on the enemy pulling the trigger. Mike, you can't control everything, can't predict everything. All you can do is your best, and then trust the Marines around you to do theirs. Michael looked at the map, at the defensive positions, at all the things he was responsible for. You really believe that? I've had to, otherwise the weight would have crushed me years ago. A moment of silence. Then Michael nodded slowly. Okay, I'll grab 2 hours, but you wake me if anything happens. Anything. Deal. Michael moved toward a corner where someone had laid out a sleeping mat. He was asleep within seconds. The particular talent of soldiers who learned to rest whenever opportunity allowed. Red watched his son sleep for a moment, saw the young man Michael had become, capable, determined, carrying burdens that would break most people. And Red felt pride mixed with regret. Pride at who Michael was, regret that he'd missed watching him become that person. A hand on his shoulder, Red turned to find Chaplain Morrison standing there. The chaplain's uniform was dusty from the journey, but his face showed the same calm Red had always known. Didn't know you were coming in with the relief convoy, Red said. Figured you might need someone to talk to. Seems I was right. They moved to a quiet corner of the compound, as quiet as any place could be when you were surrounded by people trying to kill you. How are you holding up? Morrison asked. Honestly, I don't know. 10 years, Morrison. 10 years of silence between me and my son. And now we're here fighting for our lives, trying to reconnect in between mortar strikes. It's not how I pictured this going. How did you picture it? I don't know. Coffee shop? Maybe. Neutral ground. Time to talk, to explain, to try to make him understand why I made the choices I made. And do you understand why you made those choices? Red was quiet for a long moment. The sounds of the compound drifted around them. Marines talking in low voices. Weapons being cleaned. The occasional crack of a distant gunshot. I understand that I was afraid, Red finally said. Afraid of failing as a father, so I chose something I knew I was good at. Being a Marine, leading Marines, I could control that, could measure success, couldn't do that with family, with Michael. So I ran away to the one place where I felt competent. That's pretty self-aware. Took me 36 years to get there. Morrison smiled. Better late than never. The question is, what are you going to do with that awareness? If we survive this, I'm going to try to be a father. Actually try, not just go through the motions. Michael deserves that, deserved it a long time ago. And if you don't survive? Red looked at Morrison. Then at least I was here. At least I came when he needed me. It's not enough. Not nearly enough to make up for everything. But it's something. It's more than something, Red. It's everything. The afternoon wore into evening. The sun dropped toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of red and gold. Beautiful if you ignored the fact that beauty was probably the last thing most of these Marines would see before darkness brought the next assault. Red made his rounds, checked ammunition distribution, made sure every fighting position had water. Talked to Marines, learning their names, their stories, their reasons for being here. Lance Corporal Chen, 21 years old, wanted to be a teacher after his enlistment, had a girlfriend back home who wrote him letters every week. Private First Class Rodriguez, 19, joined to get money for college, wanted to study engineering. Corporal Washington, 24, career Marine. Father had been a Marine, grandfather had been a Marine, thought he might make it to 20 years and retire as a sergeant major if this whole dying in Afghanistan thing didn't interrupt the plan. Each one had a story. Each one had people waiting at home. Each one was trusting Red and Michael and each other to get them through this alive. Red found Jake on the eastern wall, still manning the machine gun despite the fact that he'd been there for hours. "You should rotate out," Red said. "Get some rest." "In a bit. Want to make sure this sector is solid first." "It's solid. You made it solid. Now go drink some water and sit down for 10 minutes. Jake looked like he might argue, then nodded. "Yeah, okay, sir. Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Your son, Lieutenant Sullivan, he's a good officer." "He is. Does he know? About how you feel? About being proud of him and all that?" Red was quiet. "I don't think I've told him, not in so many words." "You should, before the next fight. Because Morrison told me about your wife, about how you weren't there when she died. Mike probably carries that. Probably thinks you didn't care. So you should tell him, while you can." "When did you get so wise, Sergeant?" "About 3 days ago when my wife went into labor and I realized I might never meet my daughter. Makes you think about what matters." "Yeah," Red said softly. "It does." He found Michael awake, studying the map again. His son looked marginally more rested, though still carrying the weight of command. "Feeling better?" Red asked. "Marginally less terrible. Thanks for making me sleep." "Leadership is knowing when to push and when to rest." Michael gestured to the map. "Intelligence reports are showing increased Taliban movement. They're staging about a kilometer out. Looks like they're preparing for a major assault, probably after dark." "Numbers?" "Best estimate, 60 to 80 fighters. Plus they've moved up mortars and heavy machine guns. They're going to try to suppress our defensive positions with fire, then rush the walls." Red studied the situation. The math was brutal. 200 Marines now down to 187, exhausted and low on ammunition, versus 80 fresh Taliban fighters with crew-served weapons and the advantage of choosing when and where to attack. "We're going to need every advantage we can get," Red said. "What about the M1150? Is it mobile?" "Tommy says the engine still works, but without the mine plow and with the damage we took coming in, it's more of a really heavily armored truck than a breaching vehicle." An idea formed in Red's mind. Risky, maybe crazy, but sometimes crazy was all you had left. "What if we use it as a battering ram?" Michael looked at him. "Explain." "Taliban expect us to defend, to sit behind these walls and take their assault. What if we don't? What if we use the M1150 to break through their lines, create chaos, and scatter their attack before it even starts?" "That's insane." "Probably. You'd be driving straight into their formation, outnumbered, unsupported. Not unsupported, we'd have covering fire from the compound. And surprise, they won't expect a counterattack." Michael thought about it. Red could see him running calculations, weighing risks. The same process Red had done 1,000 times. "It could work," Michael said slowly. "If the timing is right, if we can identify their staging area, if the M1150 holds together." "A lot of ifs. Always are." Michael looked at his father. "You're volunteering for this?" "It's my vehicle, my crew, my responsibility." "Dad, you could die. I could die sitting here waiting for them to come to us. At least this way, I'm doing something." Michael was quiet for a long moment. Then he made a decision. Red saw it in his eyes, the particular shift that happened when a commander committed to a course of action. "Okay, we'll do it, but on one condition." "What?" "When this is over, when we're both back in the States, you come to dinner. My place. And we talk. Really talk. About Mom, about why you weren't there, about all of it." "Mike, I'd like that." "Not would, will. Promise me, Dad. Because if you're going to risk your life on some crazy counterattack, I need to know there's something worth surviving for, and you need to know it too." Red extended his hand. Michael took it. They shook, and for the first time in 10 years, it felt like something was bridging the gap between them. Not fixed, not healed, but moving in that direction. "I promise," Red said. They briefed the plan to the crew. Jake, Tommy, and Luis gathered around the M1150 while Red laid it out. "This is voluntary," Red said. "What I'm proposing is dangerous. Probably suicidal. If anyone wants to sit this out, I understand." Jake spoke first. "Sir, I've followed you into worse. Let's do it." Tommy nodded. "I'm in." Luis just smiled. Wouldn't miss it. Red felt that tightness in his chest again. Pride, fear, gratitude for these young men who trusted him with their lives. "Okay, here's how it's going to work. Intelligence suggests Taliban are staging here." Red pointed to the map. "About a kilometer east. They're massing for a twilight assault. We're going to hit them during their final prep, right before they move to assault positions. Catch them when they're bunched up and vulnerable, Tommy said. Smart. We'll use the M1150 as a battering ram, full speed into their staging area. Luis, you'll be on the 50 cal, suppressing targets. Tommy, you'll throw every grenade we've got left. Jake, you drive. I'll command. What's the exit strategy? Jake asked. We cause maximum chaos, then punch through their lines and circle back to the compound. Speed and violence of action. Hit them so hard they're still reacting when we're already gone. And if we get disabled? Tommy asked. Red met his eyes. Then we fight our way out on foot. But we don't leave each other behind. We all come back, or none of us do. They spent the next hour preparing, checking the M1150's engine, loading ammunition, making sure every system that still worked was functioning at maximum capacity. The vehicle had taken a beating getting to the compound, but it was built to take punishment. It would have to take more. As the sun touched the horizon, painting the sky in blood colors, Michael found Red doing final checks on the vehicle. You ready? Michael asked. As ready as we're going to be. Dad, I need to say something, in case things go wrong. Mike, don't. No, let me say it. I was angry at you for a long time for choosing the Marines over us, over Mom. I thought you didn't care that we weren't important enough. Red felt each word like a physical blow, because they were true, all of it. But watching you here, watching how you lead, how these Marines look at you, how you came through hell to reach us, I'm starting to understand. You didn't choose the Marines because we weren't important. You chose them because you didn't know how to be anything else. Because this was the only place you felt like you mattered. That doesn't make it right, Red said. No, but it makes it human, and I can forgive human. I can't forgive indifference, but I can forgive fear. Michael put a hand on the M1150's armored hull. So when you come back, when we have that dinner, we're going to work on this, on us, on being a family again. Deal? Deal. They embraced. Father and son, Marine and Marine. Two men trying to bridge a decade of silence in a moment of shared danger. Be careful out there, Michael said. Always am. Liar, Red smiled. Yeah, but I'm your liar. The crew mounted up. Red took his position in the commander's seat. Jake settled into the driver's position, hands on the controls. Tommy prepped the remaining grenades. Luis checked the 50 cal one more time. All stations comms check, Red said. One by one they responded. All systems green, engine running, ready to move. Red keyed the radio to Michael's frequency. Bravo 2 actual, Breacher 6, we are ready to move. Copy Breacher 6, you are cleared hot. Good hunting. Red switched to internal comms. Crew, this is it. We're going to hit them fast and hard. Remember your training, trust each other, and for God's sake, don't do anything stupid unless I tell you to. That got some nervous laughs. Jake, on my mark, full throttle, straight into their position. Roger that, sir. Red took a breath. Thought about Sarah, his wife, gone 10 years now. Thought about Michael, finally in his life again. Thought about 36 years of choosing wrong and one chance to choose right. Execute. The M1150's turbine engine screamed to life. 50 tons of steel lurched forward. The compound gates open, and they burst out into the Afghan twilight like a mechanical demon, trailing dust and fury. The Taliban staging area appeared ahead. Vehicles clustered together, fighters gathered in groups, weapons being distributed. The moment before an assault when everyone was focused on the target ahead, not on danger from behind. Perfect. Luis, weapons free. The 50 cal opened up. The heavy machine gun's distinctive sound, like a jackhammer made by angry gods, tore through the evening air. Taliban fighters fell, others scattered. Confusion rippled through their ranks. The M1150 crashed into the first vehicle, a technical truck with a mounted machine gun. The lighter vehicle crumpled like aluminum foil. The M1150 didn't even slow down. Left! Left! Red called. Jake threw the vehicle into a turn, tracks chewing up earth and stone. They sideswiped another truck, sending it spinning. Tommy threw grenades through the vision ports. Explosions blossomed. Taliban fighters dove for cover, shot back, tried to organize a response. But the M1150 was already moving, already past them, carving a path of destruction through their carefully planned assault. Red saw him then. Through the dust and chaos, a man standing calmly while others ran, older with a gray beard and eyes that tracked the M1150 with professional interest. Khalid. Their eyes met for just a moment. Recognition on both sides. The Iraqi officer who'd survived Desert Storm and the American captain who'd destroyed his unit. 30 years of history compressed into one instant of mutual acknowledgement. Then the M1150 was passed, circling back toward the compound, and Khalid was lost in the dust. Compound in sight, Jake reported. 60 seconds to friendly lines. Taliban fire chased them. RPGs streaked past. One hit the rear armor, but the M1150's reactive panels absorbed it. Another punched through the already damaged left side, and Red felt the vehicle shudder. "We're hit!" Tommy called. "Fire in the engine compartment." "Suppression systems engaged," Jake said. "It's holding." "Just get us inside," Red ordered. The compound gates loomed ahead. Marines on the walls provided covering fire, keeping Taliban heads down. The M1150 crashed through into the compound, and the gates slammed shut behind them. They'd made it. Red popped the hatch, climbed out into smoke, and the acrid smell of burning hydraulic fluid. The M1150 was done. It had given everything it had, and now it was just a smoking piece of metal that wouldn't move again. But they were alive. All of them. His crew intact, promise kept. Michael ran up, face showing relief and anger in equal measure. "What the hell was that?" "A counterattack," Red said, coughing from the smoke. "That was insane. You could have been killed." "But we weren't, and we bought you time. Look." Red pointed to the Taliban positions. Where there had been organized preparation for assault, now there was chaos. Fighters scattered, vehicles burning, the attack momentum broken. "They're not coming tonight," Red said. "We threw them off balance. They'll need time to regroup, to reorganize. That gives us until morning." Michael looked at the destruction, then back at his father. "You crazy bastard. Learned from the best." "Who?" "You. You're the one who decided to enlist without telling anyone. To request deployment to a combat zone, to put yourself in harm's way. Where do you think you learned that from?" Michael almost smiled. "Fair point." The night passed without another assault. The Taliban, disrupted and demoralized, held their positions but didn't attack. Marines on the walls stayed vigilant but got precious hours of rest between watch rotations. Red spent the night moving through the compound, checking on wounded, talking to Marines, being present. It was what commanders did. What good commanders did, anyway. Just after midnight, he found Luis on the wall, staring out at the darkness. "Can't sleep?" Red asked. "Never could. Too much energy." Luis didn't look away from his sector. "Sir, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Why'd you do it?" "The counterattack. We could have just held the walls." "Maybe. But defense is a losing game when the enemy has more resources. Eventually they grind you down. Better to seize initiative, force them to react to us instead of the other way around." "That's the tactical answer." "What's the real answer?" Red was quiet for a moment. "The real answer? I needed to prove to myself that I could still do this. That I wasn't just an old Marine holding on too long. That I could still make a difference." "You proved it." "Did I?" "Sir, I grew up watching people who gave up, who let circumstances beat them down. My neighborhood was full of guys who just accepted that life was shit, and that's all it would ever be." Luis finally turned to look at Red. "You're 58 years old. You should be retired. Should be home, safe, comfortable. But you're here, in the dirt, fighting, not giving up. Yeah, you proved it." "Thanks, Luis." "No problem, sir. Besides, you got me thinking. When I get out, if I get out, I want to be like you. Not the broken family part, no offense, but the part where you keep going, keep fighting, even when it's hard." "Especially when it's hard," Red said. "That's when it matters most." Dawn came slowly, the sun creeping above the horizon like it was reluctant to illuminate another day of violence. But with the light came something else, a break in the weather. The sandstorm, which had grounded aircraft for days, was finally clearing. The sky, visible for the first time in nearly a week, was blue and clean and beautiful. Michael's radio crackled. "Bravo 2 actual. This is Overwatch. Weather is clearing. We have eyes on your position. Air evac is inbound. ETA 40 minutes. 40 minutes. Less than an hour between survival and salvation." Michael keyed his radio to all frequencies. "All Bravo stations, all personnel. Evac birds inbound. Begin prep for extraction. Wounded first, then by platoon. We're going home, Marines." The compound erupted in tired cheers. Marines embraced. Some cried. Others just sat down, finally allowing themselves to believe they might actually survive. Red found Michael coordinating the extraction plan. His son looked exhausted but relieved. The weight, while not gone, was at least manageable now. "We did it," Michael said. "We actually did it." "You did it. You kept them alive for 4 days. I just helped with the last night." "Dad, don't minimize what you did. That counterattack saved us, bought us the time we needed." The sound of helicopters grew in the distance. Heavy lifters, CH-53s probably, big enough to pull everyone out in 2 or 3 lifts. "Mike," Red said, "about that dinner, I meant what I said. When we're back in the States, I want to be part of your life, if you'll let me." "I will. But Dad, you have to understand, it's not going to be easy. There's a lot of hurt there, a lot of years to work through." "I know, but I'm willing to do the work. For the first time in my life, I'm willing to choose family first." Michael nodded. "Okay, then we'll figure it out, together." The helicopters came in, massive and loud and beautiful. Marines began loading, wounded first, carried on stretchers by corpsmen who'd kept them alive through days of combat. Then the others, by squad and platoon, filing aboard with their weapons and their stories and their lives intact. Red made sure his crew got on the first lift. Jake, who needed to get home to meet his daughter. Tommy, who'd found his answer about whether his father was right. Luis, who'd proven he could be more than his neighborhood expected. "Sir, you coming?" Jake called from the helicopter. "Next bird, I'm staying with Lieutenant Sullivan." The helicopter lifted off. Red watched it go, carrying his Marines to safety. Promise kept, 100% survival rate maintained. Michael found him watching the extraction. "You didn't have to stay." "Yeah, I did. You're my son. I'm not leaving without you." "Dad, I'm the last one out. Commander's responsibility." "Then I guess we're both staying." They stood together watching the second helicopter come in. More Marines loaded. The compound that had been their fortress for days was emptying out. A single shot rang out from beyond the walls. Then another. The Taliban, watching their prey escape, taking final impotent shots at the departing helicopters. One bullet hit near Michael. Too close. Red moved without thinking, putting himself between his son and the incoming fire. "Dad, what are you doing?" "What I should have done 36 years ago, protecting my family." More Marines loaded. The compound was nearly empty now. Just Michael's command element remained. A dozen Marines waiting for the final bird. Red's radio crackled. Khalid's voice one last time. "Captain Sullivan, you have won this battle. Your son lives. You live. But I want you to know something." Red keyed his radio. "I'm listening." "I wanted revenge. Wanted you to suffer as I suffered. But watching you these past hours, seeing you risk everything for your son, seeing him risk everything for his Marines, I realize we are not so different. We both chose duty over family. We both paid the price. The difference is you get a chance to fix your mistake, to choose differently." "What about you?" Red asked. "For me, it is too late. My family is long dead. My country destroyed. All I have left is war. But you, Captain, you still have time. Do not waste it as I wasted mine." The radio went silent. The final helicopter approached. Michael's Marines loaded, weapons pointed outward, ready to fight to the last second if needed. But the Taliban fire had stopped. Maybe they were out of ammunition. Maybe they were tired. Maybe Khalid had called them off. Michael and Red were the last two. They climbed aboard together, father and son, leaving the compound and the battle and the blood behind. As the helicopter lifted off, Red looked down at the Afghan desert, saw the compound shrinking below, saw the Taliban positions, saw the whole battlefield from above, the way God might see it. Just men fighting and dying over dirt and ideology and things that probably didn't matter in the long run. But what mattered was here, in this helicopter, his son alive, his crew safe, Marines going home to families and lives and futures. That mattered. That was everything. Michael sat beside him, head back, eyes closed. Exhausted but alive. Red put a hand on his son's shoulder. Michael's hand came up to grip his father's. No words, none needed. They were going home, together. For the first time in 10 years, for the first time in maybe 36 years, Red Sullivan had chosen right. And it felt like the beginning of something. Not a fix, not a cure, but a start. A path forward where there had only been wasteland before. The helicopter flew toward the sunrise, carrying its cargo of tired Marines and broken families beginning to heal in the strange mercy that sometimes comes in the aftermath of violence. Red looked at his son and thought about dinner, about conversation, about time, about choosing every day to be present instead of absent, to be father instead of just Marine. It wouldn't be easy. Years of damage didn't heal overnight, but they had time now. They had survived, they had each other, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough to build on. The helicopter flew on into the morning light, leaving the darkness behind. The helicopter touched down at Bagram Airfield 3 hours later. Red's boots hit the tarmac, and for the first time in days, he allowed himself to believe they had actually made it out alive. Around him, Marines from Bravo Company were being triaged by medical personnel, sorted into categories of walking wounded and those who needed immediate attention. Michael limped past, heading toward the aid station. His left leg, the one Red had noticed favoring during the siege, was worse than he'd let on. A corpsman tried to guide him toward a stretcher, but Michael waved him off. "I can walk," Michael said. His voice carried the particular stubbornness that Red recognized. Had used himself countless times when injured and refusing to admit it. Red caught up with his son. "Mike, let them look at your leg." "It's fine." "It's not fine. You've been limping for 3 days." "Dad, there are Marines here who need the doctors more than I do. I'll get checked when they're taken care of." Red wanted to argue, but he understood the logic, understood the commander's instinct to put his people first, even at personal cost. It was the same instinct that had kept Red in the military for 36 years. The same instinct that had cost him his family. "At least let me look at it," Red said. They found a quiet corner near a supply warehouse. Michael sat on a crate and rolled up his pant leg. The wound was bad. Shrapnel, probably from a mortar or RPG that had hit near his position days ago. The field dressing was soaked through, and the skin around the wound was angry and inflamed. "Jesus, Mike, this is infected. You've been walking on this for how long?" 3 days, maybe 4. Lost track." Red flagged down a corpsman. The young Navy medic took one look and immediately called for a doctor. Within minutes, Michael was being loaded onto a stretcher despite his protests, heading for the base hospital. "Dad, I'm fine. I need to debrief. Need to make sure my Marines are accounted for." "Your Marines are fine. They're being taken care of. Right now, you need to let these people do their job." Michael tried to sit up. The doctor, a Navy lieutenant commander who looked like she'd dealt with stubborn Marines before, put a firm hand on his chest. "Lieutenant, you've got a serious infection and possible compartment syndrome. We need to get you into surgery. Now, either you cooperate, or I'll have these corpsmen sedate you, and we'll do it anyway." Michael looked at Red. "Dad, go. I'll check on your Marines. I'll make sure everyone's accounted for. You've done your job. Let someone else take care of you for a change." The fight went out of Michael. He lay back on the stretcher, exhausted and in pain, and finally allowing himself to be vulnerable. As they wheeled him away, he caught Red's hand. "Don't leave. Don't go back to the States without seeing me." "I won't. I promise." "You said that before about Mom. You promised you'd be there." The words were spoken without malice, just stating fact. But they hit Red like a physical blow because they were true. He had promised, had broken that promise, had broken so many promises over the years. "This time is different," Red said. "This time I choose you. I'll be here when you wake up." Michael nodded and let go. The stretchers disappeared into the hospital, and Red was left standing in the Afghan sun, feeling every one of his 58 years. Jake Morrison found him an hour later. Bulldog had cleaned up, gotten medical attention for the minor injuries he'd sustained, and was now holding a satellite phone with a smile so wide it looked like it might split his face. "Sir, I just talked to my wife. Saw a picture of my daughter." He showed Red the phone, a tiny red-faced infant, wrapped in a pink blanket, looking like every newborn Red had ever seen. Beautiful and strange and miraculous. "She's perfect," Red said. "Amanda Marie Morrison, 8 pounds, 2 ounces, born 3 days ago while I was getting shot at in Sangan Valley." Jake's eyes were wet. "Sir, I almost didn't get to meet her. Almost didn't make it home." "But you did. Because of you. Because you brought us through. Sir, I don't know how to thank you for that." Red gripped Jake's shoulder. "You thank me by going home, by being a father to that little girl, by being present in her life in all the ways I wasn't present in Michael's. That's how you thank me." "I will. I swear it." Tommy and Luis appeared, looking exhausted but alive. Tommy had a bandage on his arm from a shrapnel wound Red hadn't even known he'd received. Luis walked with the particular swagger of someone who'd survived something that should have killed him and was feeling invincible. "Sir," Tommy said, "we just got word. Our crew is being recommended for Silver Stars, all 4 of us, for the counterattack." Red shook his head. "You boys earned those. I just told you where to drive." With respect, sir, that's bullshit, Luis said. You led us through a minefield, into a siege, and then straight into the enemy's staging area. We followed because we trusted you, because you've never lost a crew member in 36 years. That's not luck. That's leadership. Leadership is making sure your people get home. You three are home. That's what matters. They stood together, four men who'd gone through hell and come out the other side, bound now by shared experience in a way that civilian friendships could never match. What happens now? Tommy asked. For you, I mean. You were supposed to retire. I am retiring. Soon as the paperwork clears. Soon as I make sure Michael's okay. And then, Jake asked, then I try to figure out how to be a civilian, how to be a father, how to make up for 36 years of doing everything wrong. Sir, Luis said, you didn't do everything wrong. You saved lives. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, when you count all the people you trained and led. That's not nothing. No, Red agreed. But it's not a son either. They understood. These young men, with their whole lives ahead of them, understood in a way that Red was only just learning, that there were different kinds of success, different kinds of failure, and that sometimes the things you were best at weren't the things that mattered most. Red spent the next 2 days at Bagram. He attended debriefings, filled out after action reports, and checked on every Marine from Bravo Company. Made sure they were getting proper medical care, that their families had been notified they were safe, that the ones who needed it were talking to chaplains or mental health professionals. He visited the wounded in the hospital, sat with Lance Corporal Chen, who was going to lose 2 fingers but was alive and joking about how he'd have a great story for his students someday. Talked with Private Rodriguez, who'd taken shrapnel to his leg and was looking at a long recovery but would walk again. Spent time with Corporal Washington, who'd been knocked unconscious by a mortar blast and was dealing with a concussion and temporary hearing loss. Each one thanked Red for coming to get them. Each one said they wouldn't have made it without the breacher team. Red deflected the praise, directed it toward Michael and the other officers and NCOs who'd kept Bravo Company alive for 4 days of siege. But he accepted their gratitude, because that's what leaders did. They carried the weight of their people's thanks, along with the weight of their people's lives. On the morning of the 3rd day, a doctor found Red in the hospital cafeteria, drinking coffee that tasted like it had been brewed sometime during the previous war. Captain Sullivan, your son is awake and asking for you. Red abandoned the coffee and followed the doctor to Michael's room. His son was propped up in bed, leg elevated and wrapped in fresh bandages. He looked better. The fever had broken, the antibiotics were working, and the particular gray exhaustion that came from leading Marines in combat was starting to fade. Hey, Dad, Michael said. His voice was rough but steady. Hey yourself, how you feeling? Like someone scraped the infection out of my leg with a rusty spoon, which, according to the doctor, is pretty much what they did. How long was I out? 2 days. They had to debride the wound, pump you full of antibiotics, and make sure the infection hadn't spread. Doctor says you're lucky. Another day or two, and you might have lost the leg. Michael looked down at his bandaged limb. Still got it, though. That's something. Yeah. Red pulled a chair up beside the bed, sat down. Mike, I've been thinking about what you said about dinner and talking. I want that. But more than that, I want to know you, the man you've become, not just Lieutenant Sullivan, but Michael, my son. Michael was quiet for a moment. Outside the window, helicopters were taking off and landing, the constant rhythm of a forward operating base. The sound of war continuing while they had this moment of peace. I don't know where to start, Michael said. There's so much. 10 years of anger and hurt and trying to understand why you weren't there. Start anywhere, I'll listen. Okay. Michael took a breath. I enlisted 4 years ago. You didn't know because I didn't tell you. Didn't tell anyone connected to you. I wanted to do this on my own terms, not as Captain Sullivan's son. Wanted to prove I could make it without your reputation helping or hurting me. You succeeded. Your Marines love you. They'd follow you anywhere. I learned that from watching you, from seeing how your crews always came back. Even when I was a kid, even when I resented you for being gone all the time, I knew you were good at what you did, that Marines trusted you. I wanted that, wanted to be worthy of that kind of trust. Red felt emotion rising in his throat. You are, son, you absolutely are. But here's the thing, Dad, I also learned what not to do from you. When I was in officer candidate school, they asked us about work-life balance. about how to be a leader without sacrificing your personal life. And I thought about you and Mom and how that worked out. It didn't work out. No, it didn't. So I promised myself I'd be different, that I'd serve, but I wouldn't let the Corps consume me the way it consumed you. That's smart, smarter than I ever was. Michael shifted in the bed, trying to find a more comfortable position. When Mom got sick, when she was going through chemo, she used to tell me stories about you, about when you first met, when you were just a young lance corporal and she was a college student. She said you were funny, that you made her laugh, that you had dreams beyond the military. Red remembered those days. Felt like a lifetime ago. I did. We were going to travel, see the world, maybe start a business when I got out. She wanted to teach. I wanted to. Hell, I don't even remember what I wanted. You wanted to be a good Marine, and you were. But somewhere along the way, being a good Marine became being only a Marine. Everything else fell away. Yeah, Mom never blamed you. Even at the end, when you weren't there, she didn't blame you. She'd say, your father is doing important work. He's saving lives. And I'd think, but he's not saving her. He's not here holding her hand while poison gets pumped into her veins. He's not here when she throws up from the chemo or cries because her hair is falling out. Each word was a knife. Red deserved every cut. I was angry for her, for all the birthdays you missed, all the school plays, all the moments that you chose duty over family. And then she died, and you showed up 3 days late to the funeral, and I realized you were never going to change, that the Marines would always come first. I'm sorry, Red said. It was inadequate. 2 words trying to cover 36 years of failure. But it was all he had. I know you are. I can see it in your face, but Dad, sorry isn't enough. Sorry doesn't change what happened. Sorry doesn't give me back my mother or my childhood or the father I needed. No, it doesn't. Mike, if I could go back and change things, I would, but I can't. All I can do is try to be better going forward. Try to be the father you deserved all along. Michael looked at him for a long moment. Red saw pain there, saw years of accumulated hurt, but also something else, something that looked like hope. I want to believe that. I want to believe you can change. But I've heard this before. After every deployment, every missed event, you'd come home and promise things would be different, and they never were. This time is different. Why, Brasanda Deli? Why? Because I almost died? Because you finally had a consequence scary enough to make you pay attention? Because I finally understand what I lost, what I was losing all along. Mike, I've spent 36 years being a Marine. I'm damn good at it. But being good at something doesn't make it right. I should have been good at being your father. That should have been my primary mission, and I failed it completely. Red stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the helicopters and the mountains and the war that never seemed to end. I can't fix what I broke. Can't give you back the years I stole, but I can give you the future. Can try to be present, to be there, to choose you over everything else, if you'll let me. Silence. Then Michael spoke, his voice softer. Dad, turn around. Red turned. Michael was sitting up straighter despite the pain it obviously caused. I want to believe you, and part of me does. Part of me saw you drive through a minefield to reach me and thought maybe he does care. Maybe he always cared, just didn't know how to show it. But the other part, the part that learned not to count on you, that part is scared. Scared of hoping and being disappointed again. I understand. So here's what we're going to do. When we get back to the States, we're going to start small. Weekly phone calls, just to check in, see how you're doing. No expectations beyond that. And if you can keep that commitment, if you can show up for something as simple as a phone call every week, then we'll build from there. Weekly phone calls. I can do that. And Dad, if you miss one, if you let something else take priority, if you choose anything over that call, we're done. I can forgive the past, but I won't accept the same pattern repeating. One strike and you're out. Understood? Red met his son's eyes, saw the ultimatum for what it was. Not cruelty, but self-protection. A boundary that said, I'll give you one more chance, but I won't let you hurt me again. Understood. Weekly calls, no excuses. I'll be there. Okay then. Michael lay back, exhausted from the conversation. Now get out of here. I need to sleep, and you need to go finish your retirement paperwork. Red moved toward the door, then stopped. Mike, one more thing. Yeah? I love you. I should have said it more when you were growing up. Should have said it every day. But I'm saying it now. I love you, son. Michael's eyes glistened. I love you too, Dad. Red left the room before the emotion overwhelmed him, stood in the hospital corridor, and let the tears come. 36 years of holding it together, of being strong, of never showing weakness. To hell with that. His son was alive. They had a chance. That was worth crying over. The retirement ceremony happened 1 week later at Camp Leatherneck. Colonel Davidson insisted on it, despite Red's protests that he didn't need or want the attention. But the military loved its ceremonies, its rituals of recognition and transition. Red stood in dress uniform, surrounded by Marines from multiple units. Jake, Tommy, and Louis were there in the front row, freshly awarded silver stars pinned to their chests. Members of Bravo Company who could attend had come, including several wounded who'd insisted on being there despite medical advice. And in a wheelchair, legs still healing, was Michael. Colonel Davidson spoke about Red's 36 years of service, about the missions, the lives saved, the perfect record of bringing every crew member home alive, about courage and dedication and the kind of leadership that inspired others to be better than they thought they could be. It was all true. It was also incomplete, because it didn't talk about the bond, about the wife who died while her husband was at war, about the son who grew up essentially fatherless, about the decades of choosing wrong. But that wasn't what retirement ceremonies were for. They were for celebrating service, not examining its price. When Davidson finished his speech, he called Red forward, presented him with the Legion of Merit for his final mission, handed him a folded flag and a certificate of retirement, shook his hand while photographers captured the moment for posterity. Then it was Red's turn to speak. He stepped to the podium, looked out at the assembled Marines, and spoke from the heart. 36 years. When I enlisted, I was a kid who didn't know what he wanted except to be part of something bigger than himself. The Marine Corps gave me that, gave me purpose, identity, brothers in arms. It made me who I am. He paused, gathered his thoughts. But it also took things from me, time with family, presence in my son's life, the chance to be a husband to a woman who deserved better. I don't regret my service. I'm proud of what we accomplished, of the Marines I served with, of the lives we saved. Red looked directly at Michael. But I do regret the con, and regret that I didn't understand until far too late that being a good Marine didn't have to mean being a bad father. That service and family weren't mutually exclusive. That I could have had both if I'd just been willing to find balance. He turned back to the assembled Marines. So, to the young Marines here, the ones just starting out, I'll tell you what nobody told me. What I had to learn the hard way. Your family needs you more than the Corps needs you. Your children need you more than your commander needs you. And when you're old like me, when you look back on your life, the medals and the missions won't matter nearly as much as the moments you missed. Red's voice roughened with emotion. I was given a gift 3 weeks ago, a chance to save my son's life, to be there when he needed me most. It doesn't erase 36 years of absence, doesn't fix what I broke, but it's a start, and I'm grateful for it. He stepped back from the podium. The ceremony concluded with the traditional final salute. Red saluted the flag, the assembled Marines, and the life he was leaving behind. Then he walked to his son. Michael struggled to stand from the wheelchair despite the pain. They met in the middle, and this time the embrace lasted longer. Father and son, Marine and Marine, broken family beginning to heal. You did good, Dad, Michael whispered. I'm going to do better. From now on, I'm going to do better. I believe you. 3 months later, Red was standing in the kitchen of a house in North Carolina. It was small, a rental, but it was his. First place he'd lived as a civilian in 36 years. The walls were bare except for a few photographs. The furniture was minimal, but it was home. His phone rang. Saturday morning, 10 o'clock, like clockwork. The weekly call. Hey, Mike, Red answered. Hey, Dad, how's civilian life treating you? Strange. I don't know what to do with all this free time. Thought about getting a job, but I'm not qualified for much outside the military. You'll figure it out. What did you do this week? They talked for 40 minutes about nothing and everything, Michael's physical therapy and how his leg was healing. Red's attempts to navigate grocery shopping and cooking for himself. The job interview Michael had scheduled for after his discharge, teaching tactics at a military academy. Red's decision to volunteer at a veterans center. Normal conversation, father and son catching up. It shouldn't have felt revolutionary, but it did. Dad, I've got something to tell you, Michael said as the call was winding down. What's that? I met someone, a physical therapist at the hospital. We've been talking and it's getting serious. Her name is Jennifer. I think you'd like her. Red felt warmth spread through his chest. That's great, Mike. Really great. I was thinking, maybe in a month or so, when I'm more mobile, we could all have dinner. You, me, and Jennifer. If you're willing to drive up. I'll be there. Just tell me when and where. Okay. Oh, and Dad, thanks for calling. Every week, like clockwork. I know it's simple, but it matters. Shows me you're serious about this. I'm serious. More serious than I've been about anything except maybe keeping Marines alive. After they hung up, Red sat at his kitchen table and looked at the calendar on the wall. 12 weeks of Saturdays marked off. 12 successful calls, not a single one missed. It was working. Slowly, carefully, 1 week at a time, they were building something. Not a replacement for what had been lost, but something new. Something fragile but growing stronger. 6 months after Afghanistan, Red drove to Virginia. Michael had invited him for Thanksgiving dinner. Jennifer would be there, some of Michael's Marine friends. A real holiday gathering. Red had spent the past 36 Thanksgivings in mess halls, eating with whatever unit he was attached to, deployed to whatever corner of the world needed Marines. This was his first civilian Thanksgiving. He was nervous. Michael's apartment was small but neat. Military habits died hard. Pictures on the walls showed Michael's life over the past 4 years. Him at officer candidate school, with his platoon, in Afghanistan before the siege. A few older photos too, including one of Michael as a kid in that Halloween Marine costume. Jennifer was warm and welcoming. A physical therapist at Walter Reed, she'd worked with dozens of wounded Marines and knew the culture. She shook Red's hand firmly and said, "Michael's told me a lot about you." "All bad, I hope," Red said, trying for humor. "Mix of both, but mostly about how you're trying to make up for lost time. That's admirable." The dinner was good. Turkey and all the traditional fixings. Michael had cooked most of it himself, learning from YouTube videos. They ate and talked and laughed, and for the first time in decades, Red felt like he was part of a family. After dinner, while Jennifer was in the kitchen, Michael pulled Red aside. "Dad, I want to show you something." He led Red to a small bedroom that served as an office. On the desk was a framed photograph. Sarah, Red's wife, Michael's mother. She was young in the photo, maybe 30, smiling at the camera with joy that came from being happy. "I look at this every day," Michael said, "to remember her, to remember what she taught me about kindness and patience and forgiveness. She was better than me in every way. Different, not better. Dad, I've been thinking about what she'd say if she could see us now. See us trying to rebuild this relationship. And I think she'd be proud, not because you're perfect or because the past is erased, but because you're trying, because you showed up." Red felt the familiar tightness in his throat. "I wish she were here to see it." "Me too, but Dad, she is here. In the lessons she taught us, in the forgiveness she modeled, in the hope that broken things can be mended if people are willing to do the work." They stood together in silence for a moment, honoring the memory of a woman who'd loved them both and deserved better than either had given her. "Michael, I need to say something. I know I can't change the past, can't give you back your childhood, or bring your mother back, or undo 36 years of absence. But I can give you the future, can be here for your life going forward. When you marry Jennifer, I'll be there. When you have kids, I'll be the grandfather who shows up, who's present, who doesn't miss birthdays or holidays or the small moments that matter." Michael turned to face him. "That's all I ever wanted, Dad. Not perfection, just presence, just you being there." "I will be, that's my promise. And this time I'm going to keep it." 1 year after Afghanistan, Red got a phone call. Colonel Davidson, now retired himself, was organizing a reunion for the Marines involved in the Sangin Valley rescue. Would Red be interested in attending? Red said yes immediately. The reunion was held at a hotel near Camp Lejeune. Marines from Bravo Company, the breacher crew, support personnel who'd help coordinate the mission. About 50 people total, some in uniform, most in civilian clothes. Jake Morrison was there with his wife and daughter. Amanda was walking now, a tiny tornado of energy. When she saw Red, Jake said, "Amanda, this is Captain Sullivan. He helped Daddy come home to you." The little girl looked up at Red with serious eyes, then held up her arms. Red picked her up, and she patted his face with small hands. "Thank you for bringing Daddy home," she said with a lisp. Red had to blink back tears. "You're welcome, sweetheart." Tommy Chen was there talking about his new job teaching at a private school. He'd found his answer, found meaning in helping kids learn. "My dad was right," Tommy said. "Life matters most when you are serving something bigger than yourself." Turns out that doesn't have to be the military. Can be education, can be a lot of things. Luis Hernandez showed up in a suit, looking professional and confident. He'd gotten hired by a private security company, was making good money, and had moved his mother out of East LA to a safer neighborhood. "Sir, remember what you said about being like you, about not giving up?" Luis asked. "I remember. I took that to heart, started taking college classes online. Figure I'll get a degree, maybe go into law enforcement or something. Point is, I'm not letting my past define my future, just like you're not letting your past define yours." Michael was there too, walking with barely a limp, Jennifer on his arm. They'd gotten engaged 3 weeks earlier. The wedding was planned for next spring, and Michael had already asked Red to walk him down the aisle. "Not give him away," Michael had said, "because nobody gives anyone away anymore, and besides, you weren't around enough to have that right. But walk beside me as my father? Yeah, I want that." Red had accepted, honored, and humbled by the request. During the reunion day and dinner, Colonel Davidson stood to speak. He talked about the mission, about the courage displayed, about the miracle of bringing all 200 Marines home alive. Then he said something unexpected. "But this mission taught me something beyond tactics and courage. It taught me about redemption, about second chances. Captain Sullivan spent 36 years being one of the best Marines I've ever known, but he also spent those 36 years making mistakes in his personal life, mistakes that cost him dearly." Davidson looked at Red, but when it mattered most, when his son needed him, Red didn't hesitate, didn't calculate the odds, or consider the risk to his retirement. He went, and in doing so, he showed all of us that it's never too late to choose differently, never too late to be better. The room applauded. Red stood, accepted the recognition, and then added his own words. "Colonel Davidson is right about one thing. I made mistakes, a lot of them, but I was wrong about something fundamental. I thought being a good Marine and being a good father were mutually exclusive, that I had to choose between service and family." He looked around the room at all these Marines, young and old, active and retired. "That's a lie. You can serve your country and love your family. You can be dedicated to the mission and present for your children. It's hard. It requires sacrifice and compromise and a willingness to prioritize differently than I did. But it's possible." Red's eyes found Michael in the crowd. "My son is here today not because I'm a hero, but because I finally learned, late though it was, what really matters. These young men and women, the Marines we brought home, they matter. But so do the families waiting for them, and so do the children growing up needing their parents. So does the spouse wondering if their loved one will come home." He paused, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "We talk a lot in the military about the mission being paramount. And in combat, yes, the mission matters. Lives depend on it. But in the bigger picture, in the arc of a life, the mission that matters most is the one at home. The people who love us, the family we're supposed to protect and cherish and be present for." Red raised his glass. "So here's my toast. To the Marines who came home, to the families who welcomed them, and to the second chances we don't always deserve but sometimes receive anyway. May we all be worthy of them." The room drank, and the reunion continued with stories and laughter, and the particular bond that forms between people who faced death together and survived. Later, Red found himself outside on the hotel patio. The North Carolina evening was warm, stars visible despite the light pollution. He was thinking about Sarah, about all the nights he'd been away, about all the moments he'd missed. Michael found him there. "You okay, Dad?" "Yeah, just thinking." "About Mom?" "About everything. About the life I lived and the life I should have lived. About whether it's possible to do both." Michael leaned against the railing beside his father. "You know what Jennifer told me? She works with wounded Marines every day. Guys with missing limbs, traumatic brain injuries, PTSD. She says the ones who recover best, who adapt and move forward, are the ones who have family support, who have people at home giving them a reason to heal." Makes sense. She also said the hardest cases are the ones who isolated themselves before they got hurt, who chose the military over everything else, and then suddenly found themselves alone when they needed help most. No family to support them, no relationships to sustain them. Michael turned to face Red. "Dad, you could have been one of those guys. Could have ended up alone and broken after 36 years of choosing wrong. But you're not. You're here. We're rebuilding. And I think that's Mom's gift to both of us. She taught us forgiveness. Taught us that family is worth fighting for." I wish I'd learned it sooner. But you learned it. That's what matters. And Dad, I want you to know something. I'm proud of you. Not just for being a good Marine, but for being willing to change, for admitting you were wrong and working to be better. That takes more courage than any combat mission. Red pulled his son into an embrace. Thank you, Mike. That means more than you know. They stood together on the patio, father and son, while inside the reunion continued and Marines celebrated survival and second chances in the strange mercy that sometimes comes after violence. 2 years after Afghanistan, Red stood in a small church in Virginia. Michael and Jennifer's wedding day. Red wore his dress blues one last time, the uniform he'd lived in for 36 years now reserved for special occasions. He walked Michael down the aisle, not giving him away but supporting him. Standing beside him as father and son, equals now in a way they'd never been before. The ceremony was beautiful. Jennifer was radiant. Michael was nervous but happy. And when they exchanged vows, when they promised to be present for each other through all of life's challenges, Red thought about Sarah. Thought about the vows he'd made to her and how he'd failed to keep them. Not through malice or lack of love, but through misplaced priorities and an inability to balance competing demands. He wouldn't let Michael make the same mistakes. They talked about it, father and son conversations about how to be a husband and an officer simultaneously, how to set boundaries, how to say no when necessary, how to choose family without abandoning duty. Michael was learning lessons Red had learned too late, and that, Red thought, was perhaps the greatest gift he could give his son. Not the wisdom of doing things right the first time, but the wisdom that came from doing things wrong and learning better. At the reception, during the father-son dance, Michael said, "Thanks for being here, Dad. Wouldn't miss it." I know. That's what makes it mean something. Because now when you say you'll be there, I believe you. Red pulled his son closer. I'll always be there, Mike. From now on, I'll always be there. 5 years after Afghanistan, Red's phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon. Michael's voice, excited and slightly panicked. Dad, Jennifer's in labor. We're heading to the hospital now. I'm on my way. Red drove 3 hours from North Carolina to Virginia, probably exceeding the speed limit more than once. When he arrived at the hospital, Michael was in the waiting room, looking exactly how every new father looks, terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. How is she? Red asked. Good, strong, cursing me for getting her into this situation, but the doctor says everything is progressing normally. They waited together. Red told stories about when Michael was born, how Sarah had been in labor for 18 hours, how tiny Michael had been, how Red had been terrified of holding him wrong and breaking him. You were there? Michael asked. For my birth? I was. It was between deployments. I almost missed it, but I made it with 2 days to spare. Held you while your mother slept after the delivery. Promised I'd always protect you, always be there for you. But you weren't. No, but I'm here now, and I'll be here for your child. I promise you that. 6 hours later, a nurse came to get them. Jennifer was in recovery, and there was someone who wanted to meet Grandpa. The baby was perfect. Tiny and red-faced and absolutely perfect. Sarah Ann Sullivan, named after the grandmother she'd never meet. Michael placed his daughter in Red's arms. Dad, meet your granddaughter. Red looked down at the infant and felt something shift in his chest. A second chance. Not just to be a better father to Michael, but to be the grandfather he should have been a father. To be present. To show up. To not miss the moments that mattered. Hello, Sarah, Red whispered. I'm your grandpa, and I'm going to be here for everything. Every birthday, every school play, every moment your parents will let me. That's my promise to you. The baby made a small sound, and Red took it as acceptance. 10 years after Afghanistan, Red sat in his living room surrounded by family. Michael and Jennifer, now with 3 children. Sarah was 9, her brother Jack was 6, and the youngest, Emma, was 4. They came over every Sunday for dinner, a tradition they'd started 5 years ago and never broken. Red had learned to cook, not well but adequately. Tonight was spaghetti and meatballs, garlic bread, salad, simple food but made with love. The children called him Papa Red. They climbed on him like a jungle gym, demanded he read them stories, asked him endless questions about being a Marine. He answered honestly, age appropriately, and always ended with the same message. The Marine Corps was important. Serving my country was important. But you know what's more important? Family. Being here with you, that's what matters most. After dinner, after the kids were occupied with toys and Michael and Jennifer were cleaning up despite Red's protests, Michael pulled his father aside. Dad, I wanted to tell you something. I've been thinking about retiring from the Marines, getting out after 12 years of service. Why? Because I don't want to make the same mistakes you did. Don't want to miss my kids' childhood. Don't want Jennifer to be essentially a single parent while I'm deployed. The military has been good to me, taught me a lot, but I think it's time to choose different. Red felt conflicting emotions. Pride that his son had learned from his mistakes. Sadness that Michael felt he had to choose. Understanding because Red knew firsthand the impossible balance of military service and family. What will you do? Red asked. Jennifer and I have been talking about starting a nonprofit, working with veterans, helping them transition to civilian life, using what we've learned to help others avoid the pitfalls we experienced. That's good work, important work. And it means I can be home for dinner every night, can coach Jack's soccer team, can be at Sarah's school events, can be the father they deserve and the husband Jennifer deserves. Red gripped his son's shoulder. Mike, that's the smartest decision you've ever made, and I'm proud of you for making it. You taught me, Dad, by showing me what happens when you don't make that choice. You paid the price so I wouldn't have to. That's worth something. It's worth everything. 15 years after Afghanistan, Red received a letter. It was from Afghanistan, forwarded through several military channels before finding him. The handwriting was neat, precise, written by someone educated and careful. It was from Khalid Massoud. Captain Sullivan, you do not know me, but I know you. I am the son of Colonel Khalid Massoud, the man who tried to kill you and your son 15 years ago. My father died 5 years ago, cancer. Before he died, he told me about you, about your confrontation, about how you spared his life when you could have killed him. He said you taught him something, that revenge was empty, that the true measure of a man was not in how fiercely he fought his enemies, but in how well he loved his family. He said you went through hell to save your son, and that act of love changed him. After your confrontation, my father stopped fighting. He came home to Pakistan. He found what remained of our family, his sister and her children, and he spent his last 5 years being present for them, being the uncle and brother he had not been while he was consumed by war and hatred. He died at peace, and he wanted you to know that your example, the choice you made to prioritize your son over everything else, gave him permission to make a different choice, to choose family over vengeance. I am writing to thank you, not for the wars you fought or the battles you won, but for showing my father, and through him me, that it is never too late to choose differently. That family is worth more than revenge. That love matters more than victory. I hope you and your son are well. I hope you have found the peace my father found before he died. With respect, Ahmed Massoud. Red read the letter 3 times, then he called Michael. Mike, I need to tell you something about Khalid, about how our choices ripple out in ways we never expect. He read the letter aloud. When he finished, Michael was quiet for a long moment. Dad, do you realize what that means? You didn't just save me. You saved Khalid's family. You changed the trajectory of people you'll never meet, in a country you'll probably never visit again. All I did was choose you. That's my point. You chose love over duty, family over mission, and it changed everything. Not just for us, but for people half a world away. That's the power of choosing right, Dad. It ripples out. Red folded the letter carefully, placed it in a drawer with other important documents. Letters from Marines he'd served with, commendations from missions, photos of family. And he thought about the breach. Not the physical breach through minefields and enemy lines, but the breach between father and son, between duty and family, between the life he'd lived and the life he should have lived. That breach had been crossed. Not easily, not quickly, but step by step, choice by choice, day by day, they'd built a bridge across it. And now, 15 years later, Red Sullivan could honestly say he'd found what he'd been looking for all along. Not glory or medals or perfect mission records, but something simpler and infinitely more valuable. Home. 20 years after Afghanistan, Red sat on his porch watching the sunset. He was 78 now, retired in every sense of the word. His body showed the wear of a lifetime of hard service. Bad knees, aching back, hearing damaged by decades of gunfire and explosions. But he was content. Sarah, his granddaughter, now 19 and in college, visited often. She was studying international relations, wanted to work in diplomacy. Solving problems with words instead of weapons, she told Red. But I learned from you, Papa Red. Sometimes you have to fight for what matters. You just have to be smart about what you're fighting for. Jack, 16, was talking about joining the Marines. Red had mixed feelings, pride that his grandson wanted to serve, fear of the Kents, but he trusted Michael to guide Jack better than Red had guided Michael. Emma, 14, was the artist of the family. She drew constantly, seeing the world in colors and shapes that eluded Red. She'd done a portrait of Red in his dress blues, had given it to him for his birthday. It hung in his living room, a reminder of who he'd been. Michael pulled up in his truck. He'd been running the nonprofit for years now, had helped hundreds of veterans transition successfully to civilian life. His work had won awards, gotten media attention, made a real difference. But more importantly, he'd been present for his family, had coached his kids' sports teams, attended every school event, been the father he'd needed Red to be. "Hey, Dad," Michael called, climbing out of the truck. "Brought you groceries. Jennifer made lasagna, figured you could use some real food instead of whatever bachelor cuisine you're trying to survive on." "I eat fine." "You eat like a deployed Marine. Don't think I don't check your refrigerator." They brought the groceries in, put them away, and then sat on the porch together. Father and son, 20 years after the battle that had changed everything. "You ever think about Afghanistan?" Michael asked. "Sometimes. Less than I used to. Mostly I remember the good parts. Finding you, working together, coming home together." "Me too." Michael was quiet for a moment. "Dad, I want you to know something. What you did, coming to get me, risking everything to bring me home, that changed my life. Not just because you saved me physically, but because it showed me you could change. That people aren't locked into their patterns forever. I should have changed sooner, but you did change. That's what matters. And because you did, I got to have a father for the last 20 years. My kids got to have a grandfather. Jennifer got to have a father-in-law who shows up and loves her like his own daughter." Michael turned to face Red. "You gave me my childhood back. Can't literally do that, but you gave me everything you should have given me then. Just 20 years late. And you know what? I'll take it. 20 years of having you present is better than a lifetime of having you absent." Red felt tears on his face, but he didn't wipe them away. At 78, he'd earned the right to cry when something moved him. "Mike, you turned out so much better than me. Better father, better husband, better man. I'm proud of you. I learned from the best, learned what to do and what not to do, combined those lessons and became who I am. So thank you, Dad, for everything. The good and the bad, all of it made me who I needed to be." They sat together as the sun completed its descent. Father and son, Marine and Marine. Two men who'd found their way through minefields, both literal and metaphorical, who'd breached the walls between them, who'd chosen family over everything else. And in that moment, Red Sullivan felt something he'd been chasing for 78 years without realizing it. Peace, not the absence of conflict, but the presence of rightness. The knowledge that despite all his mistakes, despite 36 years of choosing wrong, he'd ended up exactly where he was supposed to be. Home, with family, with love. The last breach had been crossed. And on the other side, Red had finally found what he'd been fighting for all along. End.